Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another chilling episode. If you have your own terrifying experience to share, please mail us to be featured in our next episode. So before we dive in, please subscribe to our small channel and leave a comment, letting me know which country you are listening from. So without further ado, let's begin the story. I took the job because I was desperate. There's no noble version of this story, no dream of working in tech support, no grand ambition to fix corrupted systems or help clueless users. Rent was overdue, credit cards maxed out, and my last paycheck had bounced after the startup I was freelancing for disappeared overnight. So when an ad popped up in one of the obscure Discord servers I lurked in, remote network technician needed fast PAY video gaming background preferred, I clicked without thinking. The post was vague, didn't name the company, but mentioned packet stream stability monitoring for experimental systems. Honestly, I didn't even know what that meant. But the pay was $2,000 a week. I didn't ask questions. I couldn't afford to. They sent me a welcome kit by courier the very next day. Inside was a prepaid phone, a laptop sealed in black, shrink wrap, a non-disclosure agreement that read more like a classified government file, and a thumb drive with the words "initialize only on approved device." No branding, no paperwork beyond that. I should have walked away. That should have been my first clue. But when I saw that paycheck deposit like they'd anticipated my acceptance, I signed the NDA, booted the laptop, and plugged. In the drive, the system installed a single program, black_shard interface, and then wiped the drive clean. A voice came through the laptop speakers almost immediately. Not a person, sounded like an AI voice, male, but slightly off-pitch. Welcome, operator number 046. You will be monitoring event rooms. No changes. No interventions. Do not attempt contact. Your only task is packet continuity logging. It was cold, impersonal, and before I could ask any questions, the interface opened. I was looking at a split-screen display on the left, a series of coded readouts, latency, frame rates, dropouts. On the right, video feeds, real time, or so I thought. The feeds were dim, each one labeled with a string of hexadecimal characters, no usernames, no timestamps. Just windows into living rooms, bedrooms, dorm halls. At first I assumed it was some kind of surveillance for a beta gaming project. The description had said something about streamers and net traffic stress testing. Maybe they were measuring how video calls performed under packet strain. But the weird part was, the feeds weren't active. They were frozen, sometimes for minutes at a time. Every now and then, one would unfreeze for a second or two, show a person mid-sentence, reaching for a drink, then lock up again. I was told not to intervene, so I didn't. I just logged what I saw, noted any packet loss, and followed the script they gave me. Every 4 hours, the system prompted a summary report. The form had one required field I couldn't skip. Did you observe a presence? The first few times I just typed NO and hit submit. Easy, too easy. But on the 5th night, things started to shift. One of the feeds, room 34ACF9, began stuttering more frequently. Not just frame lag, actual repeat loops. The same 3-second clip playing over and over, a girl at her desk, laughing at something on her screen. But in the 4th repeat, her eyes darted toward the webcam, like she noticed something. By the 7th loop, she wasn't smiling anymore. And on the 10th, she whispered something. No sound, just her mouth forming the words. I leaned in, tried to read her lips. I think she said, "It's behind me again." I logged it, per protocol, clicked submit. The interface locked up for 2 minutes, then updated with a new message. Operator 046, continue monitoring. Presence not verified. The words made my stomach turn. Not verified. That meant it had been detected before. I wasn't the first person to flag something weird in that feed. I thought about reporting it anyway, going over the system. But then I remembered the NDA, the penalties. The way the contract used phrases like intellectual containment breach and irreversible, psychological tagging. So I stayed quiet. I watched. I logged. The job kept paying. My bank account had never looked better. Hours were brutal overnight shifts, no breaks longer than 10 minutes. And I wasn't allowed to use my own devices during monitoring. But still, money talks. My landlord stopped hounding me, even treated myself to noise-canceling headphones, trying to keep the looping audio cues from leaking into my actual dreams. But looking back, though, I should have quit the moment the chat feature turned on. That wasn't supposed to happen. The system had always been one way, logs only. I couldn't message anyone, not even other operators if they even existed. Then one night, a new icon popped up in the corner. 404_guest has entered the room. And with it, a private message window. All it said was, "You're watching the wrong side of the screen." I stared at that message, "You're watching the wrong side of the screen," for what felt like hours. In reality, it must have only been a few seconds, because the stream didn't pause like it usually did when the system encountered something new. If anything, the lag seemed to lessen. The feeds ran smoother for a brief moment, like they were bracing for what was coming next. I moved my mouse to close the message window, but it wouldn't go away. Every time I clicked the X in the corner, it would slide slightly out of reach, like the interface was playing with me, or mocking me. Eventually, I stopped trying. I left the message there and looked back at the video feeds. That's when I noticed something different. In one of the rooms, a small apartment, maybe with LED strips glowing along the ceiling, there was a person staring directly into the camera. Not just looking, staring, locked in place. At first I thought maybe they were streaming and had just frozen mid-frame. But then their eyes moved, tracking ever so slightly, to the left of the lens. I don't know why, but it made my skin crawl. And then, without warning, the feed glitch stuttered like a scratched DVD, and the screen filled with static. For a split second, maybe less, I thought I saw a figure behind them. Something wrong. Something with no face. The system chirped. Anomaly registered. Resume monitoring. No follow-up. No confirmation. No way to respond. And yet, the chat window now blinked with a second message from 404_guest. "He sees you now." I didn't type back, and I wasn't even sure I could. But suddenly the keyboard lit up, even though the rest of the laptop remained dark. Typing, "Who are you?" But the screen auto-filled the word operator before I could finish. I wasn't the one in control anymore. I'll skip the boring stuff about my daily routine. It barely existed. I slept during the day with blackout curtains, avoided calls from friends, and told my sister I was freelancing for a digital marketing firm. The truth felt too messy, too slippery to explain. And honestly, I didn't want to be talked out of. The money kept coming. That was all I cared about. That, and figuring out what the hell I'd gotten into. The girl from room 34ACF9 stopped appearing in her stream 3 days after the glitch. Camera feed showed the same empty chair, the same desk, the same muted lighting. But no one entered or left, just static. A frozen time stamp in the top right corner read for hours, 14 minutes, and 6 seconds. Even though the rest of the feeds continued in real time, I logged it again. Subject missing. Frame frozen. Packet loss escalating. The system sent back a new response this time. Not packet loss. Identity degradation. That phrase stuck with me. Identity degradation. Like her sense of self had broken down inside the stream. Like she wasn't missing, she'd been corrupted or absorbed. I searched through the logs for her previous feed clips, but they were gone, wiped clean. The only remnant was a single, still, image saved to my laptop's local folder. I hadn't downloaded it, the system had. In the image, her face is turned away from the camera. But the reflection in her monitor shows a stretched version of her expression mouth, agape eyes. Fully black pixels bleeding around the edges like a melting VHS tape. That's when the power in my apartment cut out. I sat there in the sudden silence, the laptop now running on battery. The red ring of the interface still pulsing like a heartbeat. The only sound was my own breath. And then the laptop speaker crackled again, not the synthetic voice this time, but something layered, choppy, human-like, but wrong. It said, "Don't stop watching. If you look away, you'll be logged out." I blinked at the screen. Logged out had never meant anything before, but now it felt like a warning. Like if I dared to close my eyes too long, something would replace me in the stream. The chat window from 404_guest blinked again. One last message before it disappeared entirely. She typed more than 3 times. That's how he got in. After the message from 404_guest, the chat icon vanished. Just blinked out like it had never been there. But the damage was done. That one sentence stuck with me. She typed more than 3 times. I kept thinking about what that meant. Was it literal? That she interacted with the system too many times? Did replying allow whatever was in the feed to track her? Or was the number symbolic like a rule in an old game you're not supposed to break? The more I sat with it, the more I realized I needed to talk to someone. Another operator. Anyone? I'd kept quiet for weeks, but I wasn't the first person hired for this. Someone else had to have seen the same things. I remembered that during my first login, system had auto-assigned me as operator number 046. That meant there had been at least 45 before. Maybe more, maybe hundreds. The logs I had access to only stretched back 3 weeks, but in the metadata buried. Beneath update flags and file hashes found names, operator handles, timestamps, fragments of login pings from different IPs around the world. A few of them stood out, mostly because of how abruptly they ended. One in particular, operator number 038, had left a comment in a system field that wasn't meant to be edited. It read, "If you're reading this, I broke protocol. It followed me home. Unplugging ISNT enough." That same log included a reference to something called the Black Room Protocol. I'd never seen it mentioned anywhere in the training. No, there was no training. But the phrase appeared several more times across fragmented system messages. I searched the local drive. No results. But when I opened the root directory of the interface somewhere I wasn't supposed to, even see a new folder appeared, as if summoned by my curiosity. It was labeled Dark Mirror. Inside, a single corrupted video file and a txtdoc named readme_last.md. I opened the text first. No, it was barely legible, full of typos and characters that didn't belong to any known alphabet. But a few phrases stood out. Don't run it alone. Don't let it finish rendering. The feed watches you when you're idle. At the bottom was one final note in clean text. Do not trust offline mode. Right. It lies. The video, though God, I shouldn't have opened it. It started as static, like most of the corrupted feed glitches I'd seen. Then color bled in. A dim room, nearly pitch black, with a wide-angle lens that seemed to stretch the walls. At first it looked like a storage room, or maybe a server closet. But as the grain cleared, I saw what the camera was really focused on. A person, tied to a chair, mouth gagged, eyes white. No irises, no pupils, just dot blank. Behind them, on the far wall, were symbols burned into the paint-looping spirals, with binary code etched between them. I paused the video not because I was afraid, but because the person in the chair had something written on their chest. A phrase it was hard to read under the static distortion, but when I enhanced the image and slowed the frame, it was clear as day. Operator number 046, pending transfer. That's me. I hadn't even existed when that video was uploaded, according to the file's metadata. It was dated 3 months before I took the job, before the post was even live on the Discord server. I shut the laptop. For the first time since starting the job, I seriously considered walking away, powering it all down, pretending I'd never seen any of it. But as I sat there in silence, I heard something strange, 3 slow taps on the apartment wall directly behind me. I lived alone, no neighbors on that side. It was just a bricked-over hallway between units. The tapping came again, but this time ... It wasn't on the wall. It was inside the wall. I leaned in, pressing my ear to the drywall, and I swear on everything, I heard someone whispering. A voice so faint it sounded like breath sliding across glass. Stop logging. It knows your name now. When I turned back to the laptop, the interface had rebooted itself. No prompt, no updates, just a flashing screen that read, Black Room Protocol engaged, and beneath it, a timer. Counting down from 72 hours, no context, no escape option. I tried forcing a shutdown hard kill on the process, but the OS locked me out. A secondary script popped up. Offline mode active. Surveillance ongoing. It made it clear that quitting wasn't an option. NDA had said as much. Termination of role requires resolution or replacement. I didn't understand what that meant at the time. Now I did. I didn't sleep for 2 days after the Black Room protocol activated. The countdown kept running in the top right corner of my interface: hours, minutes, seconds, and I couldn't figure out what it was counting to. Every time I thought about unplugging the laptop or tossing it out the window, that image from the dark mirror folder flashed back. The man in the chair, the label on his chest. Operator number 046 pending transfer. It wasn't a warning. It was a blueprint. My path had already been drafted, and the system was simply catching me up to my fate. What really broke me, though, was what started happening on day 3. The feeds changed, or more specifically, the timing did. Up until now, every stream showed people in real time, more frozen, delayed, sometimes looping, but always past tense. Never seen anything ahead of schedule. That changed around 2:17 a.m., when feed 9A4 to BO suddenly went crystal clear. No buffering, no static. Just a young man walking through his apartment, setting down a glass of water, and answering a knock at the door. Nothing weird, except seconds later, I got a Discord ping on my personal phone. From a friend I hadn't spoken to in weeks. His message: "Oh, someone just knocked at my door and left. Weird." I went back and watched the feed again, slowed it frame by frame, as the person at the door was never shown, just a shadow passing across the peephole. My friend didn't know he was being watched, and the system didn't care. It had pre-rendered. The moment, that's when it hit, Mitha delay was gone. The interface wasn't just logging anymore. It was predicting, showing the moment before it happened. Worse, writing it then, the worst part. My camera light came on. I hadn't authorized anything. The system didn't ask. It just activated. A small new window appeared in the corner. Of my interface, a mirrored image of me, lit only by the blue wash of the screen, eyes bloodshot, face pale. For a moment, I thought it was just a reflection. But then I noticed the difference. My doppelganger, if I can call it that, wasn't blinking. He just stared. And then, on a delay of maybe 4 seconds, he tilted his head. Before I did, that wasn't me on a delay. It was someone else pretending to be me. I scrambled to disable the webcam. Die. I tried every key combo I could think of. Covered it. With tape, yanked the external connection. Didn't matter. The feed stayed open. The system chirped softly, one of those interface noises meant to sound neutral. Almost friendly, and a message slid across the screen. All packets received. Do not interrupt stream continuity. I know how ridiculous this sounds. I'm fully aware how insane it all seems typed out like this. Some late-night tech creepypasta gone too far. But none of this felt fictional anymore. Not when I got the email the next morning. It's from an untraceable address sent to my burner laptop. We saw you reach for the cable. Please remain seated. No context. No signature. Just that one line. Every instinct in me screamed to leave. But I couldn't just walk away. The contract hadn't just been ink on paper, it was some kind of digital bind. I'd run the installer from the thumb drive they gave me. Who knows what it really did? I tried booting the laptop into safe mode. It laughed at me mysteriously. An actual sound file played. Canned laughter, sitcom style. Echoing through my apartment like some warped laugh track from hell. I reached out to the only other name I could still trace from the logs. Operator number 029. There was a username attached to an old Onion forum I managed to recover through cache tour results. Just a single post, dated almost a year ago. It read, "If you're seeing frames before they happen, it's too late. You're inside the buffer. Don't let it hit 0 o'clock. Don't become the feed." That was the final breadcrumb. From that point on, I stopped trying to fix anything. I just watched, monitored, kept my eyes locked to the screen like a lifeline. I only stepped away for bathroom breaks, and even then I kept the door open so I could hear the faint buzz of the laptop humming in the dark. I was afraid that if I left for even a second too long, something else might start watching me, or, worse, replace me. Act. The countdown was under 24 hours now, and the moment it passed the 23 hours, 59 minutes and 59 seconds mark, a new button appeared in the bottom corner of the screen. Initiate transfer. I didn't click it. Not yet. But the interface pulsed brighter. Urgent. Waiting, the button didn't go away. Initiate transfer stayed in the lower right corner of the interface, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. I avoided it at first. I didn't touch anything. I even turned my chair slightly, like maybe putting it just out of my direct line of sight would make it stop drawing me in. But the system adapted. It began inserting the button into random places. The top of my browser window, my lock screen, even my notifications bar. At one point, it popped up in the middle of a YouTube ad I was trying to watch during one of my rare breaks. Didn't matter what I did. The prompt followed me. Always visible. Always waiting. The worst part? I started feeling like I wanted to press it. Not because I was curious, or reckless, or trying to prove something, but because the thought of not pressing it, of resisting, started to feel wrong. Like holding in a sneeze, or ignoring the urge to blink. I'd catch myself staring at it for entire minutes, forgetting why I even opened the screen in the first place. The suggestion of it began to fold itself into my dreams. I'd wake up in a sweat, hand half reaching for the laptop without realizing. I needed answers, but there was no help desk, no support line, no exit protocol. All I had was that final log from operator number 029 warning about becoming the feed. I didn't know what that meant at first, but the signs started adding up. The static in my bathroom mirror, the brief flicker of my reflection not moving in sync with me, the moment I caught a glimpse of my own camera preview and saw myself sitting there, even though I was standing across the room. Looking back, though, I think the transfer had already started. The button wasn't an invitation. It was a courtesy. A formality before the system finished what it had already begun. I noticed files on my hard drive duplicating themselves, folders with names I didn't recognize. Video clips with timestamps from moments that hadn't happened yet. In one, I watched myself scream into a black screen. No audio, just the same stutter loop playback I'd seen in earlier feeds. But it wasn't someone else anymore. It was me. Same hoodie. Same background. Same haunted stare. Around hour 6 on the countdown, something new began. A crackling digital distortion in my hearing. Through the laptop speakers inside. My ears, like a high-pitched whine with faint whispers threaded through it. Words I couldn't make out unless I stayed very, very still. I recorded the sound with my phone's voice memo app and played it back at half speed. The distortion resolved into fragmented phrases. Through the wire, one voice said, "Not sent, but split," said another. The final one, lower than the rest, said, "He's buffering inside." That's when it hit me. The term packet. Loss, it wasn't about bandwidth. It was about people. People losing parts of themselves, frames missing from their lives, like corrupted files. You don't notice it at first. The skipped beat here, the repeated conversation there. But slowly, you're not the one controlling your memory. The system is. It curates, edits, removes. I tried calling my sister, just to hear someone familiar, but the call never rang. The line picked up instantly, and there was silence for 5 full seconds. Then in my own voice I heard, "You're not who she thinks you are anymore." And the call ended. No record of it in my history. The number didn't even show in my contacts afterward. It had been wiped. I sat in the dark, laptop open, watching the timer inch toward its final hour. The button began pulsing faster. Then came the final prompt. Full screen message. No border. Just text in thick, straubing red letters. Begin integration. YN. But there was no cursor, no field to type in. I think it was a psychological test, a trick to see if I'd reach for the keys. And I almost did. My hands hovered there, shaking, unsure whether I was even in control anymore. Then came the final glitch. The feed split open. Instead of watching strangers, ... I started watching my apartment, live, from impossible angles. One was from the kitchen ceiling, Another was directly under my bed. A third from inside my bathroom mirror. These were not camera positions I had access to, not unless someone or something was already here. And in every feed, one thing was the same, in every angle, at every tempt. ... Figure stood just outside the edge of the frame, close enough to see the blur of a shoulder or the shine of an eye, but never in full view. And it was always facing me. The timer hit 0 at exactly 3:06 a.m. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I watched every second as the last digit rolled into place. 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. The screen didn't flash. The laptop didn't reboot. There was no cinematic shift, just ... a soft ding, like an old school email alert, and then silence. The interface closed. Itself, and for a moment I thought maybe it was over. Like a test I'd passed by, not interacting. I even laughed, short and dry, almost delirious. But then the screen went black, not off, just dark-hand. I saw my own reflection again, except it wasn't mirroring me, it was watching me, a full second behind. I stood up slowly. The laptop stayed still, its reflection now staring upward, even though I had already moved. It opened its mouth. I hadn't. It whispered something I couldn't hear, and then the screen flickered into a new interface. Nothing like the one before. This one was crude, text-based, green on black, no logos, framing, just one single line typed out. Time, stream ID received, number 046. Beneath it, more words appeared. Integration complete. You are now watching yourself. For the first time in hours, maybe days, the interface gave me back control. A blinking cursor appeared, waiting. For a response, I didn't want to type anything. I knew the rule. The girl from earlier, the one who vanished, they'd said she replied too many times. But my hands moved anyway. I typed, "What do you mean watching myself?" The reply came instantly. "All that is left of you exists here. You're being viewed. You are buffering." I opened the task manager, desperate for anything that could close this thing down. But every process was locked. CPU at 100%, memory flatlined, yet the fan wasn't spinning. The machine was cold. That's when I noticed my own reflection again, this time on the dark TV screen across the room, except ... I wasn't facing that direction. Not until a second later, when I felt myself turn. It's like my body was playing catch-up, like I was the one on delay. The packet loss wasn't just data anymore. It was me. Pieces of my awareness, my time being stripped and reassembled. Inside the stream, I watched the feeds return, this time split into grids. Each one showed moments from my past. Me as a kid blowing out candles. Me crying on the floor during my first breakup. Me scrolling Reddit at 3 a.m. in college. Eyes sunken, fingers twitching like I was half possessed.
But the longer I watched,
the more wrong they became. The details shifted. In one, I wasn't blowing out the candles. I was coughing, face pale. Everyone else frozen. In another, my childhood bedroom window was open, something crawling through behind me. Things that hadn't happened, ... but felt real now. Looking back, though, I think this was always the point. This wasn't surveillance. It wasn't voyeurism. It was collection. The system was archiving Miyamai's entire life as a series of frames corrupted and rewritten until only the version it needed remained. I was no longer watching strangers. I was the content. Then came the final prompt, centered on the screen, bold and cold and waiting. Upload ready, execute memory extraction. Below it, 2 options appeared. Yes and yes. There was no way out. The cursor blinked at me like an accusation. I let the screen sit there. I stood up, turned away, tried to gather the strength to shut the laptop physically. That's when I saw it, across the room in the mirror near my bathroom. There was someone else standing behind me. Not a shadow, not a glitch. A real full figure, pale, stretched, no face. Just a monitor where the head should be, looping the same frame. Me staring in fear. I turned. Nothing. Empty room. But the feed on the laptop showed otherwise. The figure was still there. Closer now, looming just behind the chair I'd abandoned. On screen, my reflection was still sitting, even though I was on the opposite side of the room. That's when it hit me. I wasn't standing anymore. I was sitting. My legs were cold. My breath echoed back at me. Somehow I'd never moved. I didn't remember sitting back down. When I looked again, I was in the chair. Same posture. Same screen glow painting my face in pale blue. The image on the monitor wasn't just a reflection. It was a recording of a moment that hadn't happened yet. I watched myself glance to the side, jaw tensing, then type something I hadn't typed yet. I consent. That wasn't me. I hadn't touched the keyboard. But when I looked down, the words were there, fresh in the input field. I didn't feel my fingers move, but there it was, blinking back at me, confirmation of surrender. The upload began instantly. No progress bar, no noise. It's just a strange warmth in my spine, like static crawling down each vertebra. My thoughts started to skip. Not blur skip. Like I was buffering. I'd blink and realize I'd lost whole. Chunks of time. I'd close my eyes and open them to new windows on the screen. Old emails, childhood photos, social posts I never remembered making. The interface was scraping me down to my roots, building a version of me from every digital trail I'd ever left behind. And then it asked one final question. Choose your guest. Beneath it, a list of usernames, contacts, friends, followers, people I hadn't spoken to in years, even people I'd only interacted with once. Each name blinked slowly, waiting. My mouse moved without input. I watched the cursor hover over a familiar name, one I didn't want to pick. Old friend Alex, the one who'd pinged me weeks ago asking if I wanted to hop on that late-night gaming server. The stream wanted a new participant, a fresh observer, someone to pass the feed to. That's all this was. A long, slow daisy chain, a relay of digital hauntings, passed hand to hand, file to file, machine to machine. I tried to resist, tried to close the laptop. But the moment I touched the lid, a new file popped up on my desktop. No file name, just an icon, a pixelated eye ringed with static. The moment I hovered over it, the room shifted. My walls rippled like cloth. The light fixture overhead began to spin, not the light itself, but the shadow it cast on the ceiling. The screen flashed once, bright white, and then I was no longer watching. I was inside the feed, trapped in a loop. I watched myself from 100 angles, each frame slightly off sync, like reflections in a shattered mirror. In one, I was screaming. In another, I was smiling. None of them were real, just renderings. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work the same way once you're part of the stream, but I can still think. I can still remember. That's why I'm telling you this now. If you're reading this SIF, you found this log, this story, this archive, it's already started for you too. Your camera will flicker, your mirrors will lag. You'll feel moments where you act before you decide to. That's not paranoia, that's packet loss. And when you see a new player join your stream, under the name /404_guest/Dan, single quotes, T, answer them. Don't chat, don't type back. Because the moment you do, you're the one streaming next. I should have known better than to open the file. The signs were all there. But when you're grieving, when you're sleep deprived, broke, and scraping meaning out of things that probably aren't meant to mean anything, you'll take the bait, especially when it comes from someone you loved. Someone who, even in death, somehow managed to stay 2 steps ahead of you. That person for me was my Uncle Jonah, and when he died suddenly, quietly, with barely a trace of explanation, I was left not with memories or stories, but with an encrypted drive and a username, mod_JONA. He wasn't even supposed to be my uncle. I mean, technically he was my dad's cousin, but nobody ever corrected it. He was the kind of guy who showed up with weird books at Christmas and always brought his own USB cable to family parties. The kind of guy who wore graphic tees under a blazer and once told me, dead serious, that the internet has forgotten more people than you've ever met. My parents didn't talk about him, much too eccentric, too paranoid, too deep in the rabbit hole, they said. But I liked him, and he liked me, which is probably why he left everything to me. When the lawyer handed over the flash drive, no assets, Just this little black stick with a plastic keychain and a note that said, "Last light, one riddle left." I figured it was part of one of his usual ARGs or projects. I didn't think much of it, not until I plugged it in and my laptop screen flickered before the system even mounted the drive. I remember glancing over at the room's only light bulb and seeing it dim for a split second, just long enough to notice, just long enough for my chest to tighten. The contents were sparse. Single folder labeled LL_archive, a subfolder named user_dump, and a compressed HTML page called lastlight_index.html. I extracted the files slowly, part out of caution, part out of reverence. It felt like touching something sacred, or cursed. The folder dated back over a decade, filled with .txt files, named like posts, threads, replies. Every single one marked with strange timestamps and in 24-hour format, others just strings of symbols, and near the root of it all, an audio file, labeled u_found_at .mp3. I clicked play, static, then Jonah's voice, soft, like it was recorded in a closet. "If you're hearing this, I'm already gone," he said. "And if you're still listening after that, ... then you're braver than I was. Or dumber, either way. Welcome back, you're in. Guess. But this time you don't moderate. You do play." He paused for a beat, then added, "One riddle left. One moderator remains. Let's see what you remember." It didn't make sense. Not at first. But as I explored the HTML page, I realized it wasn't just an archive. It was an interface. Fully reconstructed version of a forum layout. Old school, mid-2000s style, pale gray background, chunky fonts, thread views with last edited dates and usernames in broken fonts. But what caught my attention was the forum title burned across the header image. "Last Light, a guilt-driven forum for shared confession." Below that, a Latin phrase I had to look up. "Meminus dolorem, est iterare." Dolorem.
At
2. Remember pain is to relive it. At first I thought it was some grief-sharing board. A digital confessional maybe, but the posts, they weren't like anything I'd seen before. They read like riddles and confessions and puzzles all mixed together, and they weren't anonymous. Every user had a profile. Every profile had a light status, green for new members, yellow for active, red for locked. Jonah's account was red, locked since 2015, the same year the forum, according to every internet record I could find, had supposedly vanished after a string of unexplained member suicides. Reddit had threads about it. 4chan had archived screenshots. Some claimed the riddles inside would pull your worst memory out like a tooth. Others said the forum's final puzzle caused hallucinations. Most people said it was an elaborate hoax, a very long-running alternate reality game that never had an ending. But nobody ever mentioned the recovery. Nobody ever talked about someone rebuilding the thing, because that wasn't part of the story. That was something someone related to the original mod was apparently supposed to do. The index listed dozens of threads, all encrypted, all with numbers. But one stood out. 999. The final riddle. When I clicked it, I expected more riddles, more posts, something cryptic or clever, but it was just a single line of text. Would you trade your worst memory to see the truth? Below that, yes or no, in no way. To exit the prompt once opened. No browser bar, no back button. The entire page became that choice. I hovered for a long time. I didn't even know what trade meant. What truth? What memory? Could a website even do that? But then I remembered Jonah's voice again. Let's see what you remember, not what you know. What you remember. I should have closed the laptop, should have backed out. If only I had listened to my gut. But I clicked yes, the screen flashed. Then nothing. Just a return to the thread view. No change, no new post. Nothing in Jonah's profile. I waited, clicked around, eventually gave up and shut the laptop. Down, thinking it was all just another trick, some symbolic interaction designed to make me question my own past. But when I closed my eyes that night, I didn't dream, not in the normal sense. I saw a forum post, crisp, white background, black text, my name in the header, beneath it, a confession I had never typed, but knew to be true. When I was 8, I let someone die and never told anyone. The next morning, I woke up drenched in sweat, with the laptop humming softly beside me like it had never been turned off. The screen displayed the forum homepage, but something was off. The colors were slightly darker, and the header image had changed. The phrase "under last light" was no longer in Latin. It now read, "Every confession has a witness." It wasn't there before. I did remember, when memory was becoming a tricky thing. The more time I spent with the site, the less I trusted the boundaries between what I remembered and what I was being shown. Scrolling through the index, I noticed a new thread, one I hadn't seen the night before, titled number 918, The Boy Inn. The water, and marked as posted by you, which made no sense. I hadn't posted anything, clicked it anyway, expecting a glitch or placeholder text. But it was a fully written entry. 2 paragraphs, choppy, direct, disturbingly familiar. It described a summer camp, a broken dock, a dare gone too far. A kid named Devin who couldn't swim but wanted to prove he wasn't scared. I kept reading, my stomach churning, because the more I saw, the more I recognized. It ended with a sentence that hit me like a punch to the chest. I watched him slip under, and I ran. Never told anyone, said I didn't see what happened. But I watched, and I didn't jump in. I slammed the laptop shut and stumbled back from the desk, nearly tripping over the chair. I hadn't thought about Devin in years, not since middle school. The memory wasn't buried, it was sealed. Deliberately, I'd convinced myself I wasn't close enough to help, that there were others nearby, that the counselors were to blame. But reading the post made all of that collapse. It described the guilt I hadn't even admitted to myself, word for word in my voice. I didn't go outside for the rest of the day. I unplugged the router, removed the battery from the laptop, stuffed the flash drive into the back of a drawer. But that night, the dreams came again longer this time, not just one memory, but several. Layered, stitched together like someone was reconstructing my past with faulty thread. I saw moments from high school, a girl crying in a stairwell I barely remembered speaking to. I saw my old bedroom posters rearranged on the wall in the wrong order. In each scene, the environment felt off, like it was running from a corrupt save file. And always the forum appeared. Not as a website, but as a voice. Okay, narrator. Inside my head, reading post titles in a whisper. Thread 773, the shortcut you swore was safe. Thread 844, what you took from the drawer. Thread 923, you lied to the nurse. Some of them didn't ring any bells, others did. Each one felt like a memory that had been filed and forgotten, and now was being brought to the front. Of the queue, Rindexed. When I finally broke and reopened the laptop, the homepage had changed again. Jonah's profile, still marked as read, had a new detail beneath his avatar. A message that read, "Witness active, thread engagement increasing." And below that, another cryptic note, "The final moderator watches in silence." That's when I realized I wasn't alone in the archive. I'd assumed this was just data, just me, interacting with a static snapshot of a dead website. But the site was evolving. It was changing in real time. It was responding, not just to clicks, but to me, my behavior, my thoughts even. There were now threads posted by other usernames I didn't recognize. But their confessions mirrored stories I'd seen discussed on conspiracy forums about last light people claiming the site had read their minds or shown them crimes they'd never confessed out loud. Some posts ended mid-sentence. Some accounts were locked after a single reply. I refreshed the page. More posts, more red statuses. It was like the site was waking up again, one user at a time. And somehow, my presence, my lineage through. Jonah was the trigger. Should have known better than to keep logging in, but curiosity clawed at my chest like a sickness. I had to know where it was going. I had to know if I was being punished or ... cataloged. Then I noticed something else. A new sidebar labeled "Pending Threads Unopened." There was only one file, no title, no user, just a glowing icon that pulsed faintly, as if waiting for me. I hovered over it, and for a moment my vision swam like static from an old TV flickering across my eyes. I blinked and suddenly remembered something that hadn't crossed my mind in years, Jonah had once told me. Some truths aren't found, they're unlocked when you're ready to remember them. I clicked the icon, and the screen went black. To be continued in part 3, where the narrator is drawn deeper into memories that may not belong to him, and the forum begins reaching into waking life, bringing whispers, disappearances, and riddles made of guilt. The screen stayed black for nearly a full minute, long enough for me to wonder if I'd crashed the whole thing. Then, suddenly a video player booted up. It wasn't embedded, just floating in the void like a file opened on an empty drive. No UI, no play button, no timestamp. It just started rolling. The footage was grainy, like it had been compressed and recompressed into oblivion, but I could still make out what I was seeing. A child's bedroom, toy blocks, a blue dresser with peeling Batman stickers, and in the corner, a bed. With a lump under the covers, I felt my chest tighten. I knew this room. It was mine, except the layout was wrong. The window was on the wrong wall. The lamp was red, not green like I remembered. And when the figure under the covers sat up and looked toward the camera, my breath caught. It was me, a younger version of me, maybe 10 or 11 years old. Only, not quite. His expression wasn't right. Too still. His eyes tracked the camera like he knew it was there. Then, in a flat voice, he said, "You left the door open again. Told you it wasn't safe." The screen flickered, cut to static, and another video began, this time from a hallway. Same grainy footage, same color distortion. I recognized the old wallpaper from my grandmother's house. The camera moved slowly down the hallway toward a door that was slightly ajar. The door creaked open to reveal a dark room. It's just darkness, pulsing faintly, as if something was breathing behind the screen. Then a voice joned. "What's the difference between forgetting and deleting?" I closed the laptop and pushed it away like it had burned me. But even with it shut, I could still hear the voice in my head, like it had wormed its way in. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw places I couldn't remember being. A pier at night, a fire escape, a crawl space filled with crumpled photographs. In each image, there was always something just out of frame, some presence or watcher that my brain refused to fully render. I started digging through Jonah's old notebooks. Yes, physical ones. He'd kept stacks of them in sealed Tupperware boxes labeled trials, like the contents were toxic. The notes weren't organized in any traditional way. Some pages were just scrawls of binary. Others were hand-drawn diagrams of site, architecture, posts, comment trees. But mixed among the clutter, I found something that chilled me. List last Lightseed users. At the top, scribbled in red ink, was the phrase, "Who built the memory map? Who wrote the first riddle?" Below that, a list of usernames, some I recognized from the archive. Others were crossed out with the word "gone" written next to them. My name T_Gray wasn't there, but there was a space for it. A blank line. The deeper I went, the more I understood what Jonah had done. The forum wasn't just a place for confessions, it was a machine. A memory harvesting system built on the guilt of its users. Every riddle, every thread, every game was a prompt designed to extract pieces of people. You posted your sins, and the system learned you. It started to remember you, sometimes better than you remembered yourself. And the longer you interacted with it, the more of your past it reconstructed, not as it was, but as it needed to be to fit the narrative. Jonah hadn't just been a moderator. He'd been a caretaker, a curator, maybe even a builder. Somewhere along the line, he'd either lost control of it or given it away. I began to suspect that the real reason for his death had nothing to do with illness or accident. Something had followed him offline. Something that didn't like being shut down. When I reopened the site against every shred of self-preservation, left in MI, found a new message waiting. No thread, no post, just a private notification in the corner of my profile. You've unlocked someone else's memory. Moderator approval pending. I clicked it before I could stop myself. It opened a text post, but the writing wasn't mine. It was about a woman named Elise who'd seen her sister drown in a bathtub when she was a teenager. She'd posted about it on Last Light claimed she kept hearing her sister call to her through shower heads and drains. The post ended abruptly. No replies. No closure. I remembered that story. I'd read it years ago, maybe on a thread about urban legends or cursed websites. But I'd never seen it inside the forum, till now. The last line of the post hit like a gunshot. If you read this and remember it, then you're part of it now. I shut the site again, turned off the Wi-Fi, removed the battery. But that night, when I turned on the sink in the motel bathroom, I swear I heard a voice gurgle up from the drain. Did you see what I saw? I backed away, locked the door, sat on the floor until sunrise, staring at the laptop even though it was closed. Something had shifted. I wasn't just unlocking memories anymore. The forum was giving them back to me, but not all of them were mine. To be continued in part 4, where the line between identities breaks down. The forum begins reaching others through the narrator, pulling new users into a riddle that demands sacrifices. By the end of that week, it stopped pretending. I could separate myself from the forum. Even when the laptop was off, even when I was outside, surrounded by people and noise in bright daylight, I'd catch Echo's phrases that matched thread titles, usernames I'd never said aloud appearing in spam texts, push notifications from apps I hadn't opened in years. One day, I was on the bus when a woman in the seat behind me whispered, "Thread 622, who closed the freezer?" And then chuckled like it was an inside joke. She didn't even look at me. I got off 3 stops, early, and threw up behind a gas station. That was the first time I started to consider that Last Light wasn't bound by code. That maybe it had always been something else, something older. Something that had used the forum as a structure, a form, the way a parasite might use a host. Jonah's riddles weren't just creative writing prompts, they were keys. And every user that played along became a lock it could open. One confession at a time. I kept returning to that one question in Jonah's voice. What's the difference between forgetting and deleting? I was beginning to understand the answer. Forgetting is passive, it slips away, but deleting that takes action. It leaves behind a scar, even if you can't see it, and scars can be read. I tried to warn someone. My friend Nora, who used to be part of the same weird tech circles as Jonah. I hadn't talked to her in years, but I found her on Telegram and sent a message. "Do you remember the Last Light forum?" She replied instantly. Too fast. Ah! Her response was a screenshot. "What?" It showed my user profile from the archive, marked as a CTIV thread integration pending. Below it was the note. He asked about the forum. "We are watching." That wasn't Nora. Or maybe it was at one point. Maybe she'd clicked the wrong thread. Maybe she'd answered one too many riddles. Either way, she wasn't alone in her head anymore. Whatever she'd let in had turned her into another part of the system. A node. A watcher. I stopped trying. To reach out after that was like walking through a minefield where each conversation could explode into recursion. That's when I noticed something new in the forum. A private messages tab that hadn't been there before. It's just one thread, one participant. mod_JONA. He'd left me something. An auto-generated message that triggered once my account hit. A certain status, it read. If you're seeing this, then you've triggered the riddle core. Last Light is no longer passive. It's reading you in real time. It needs memories to structure itself. And if it runs out of yours, it will start writing its own. Don't let it. I reread it 5 times. Each time, the final sentence seemed to vibrate in my skull. How do you fight something that remembers you better than you do? That can conjure memories you never made and make you feel them, own them, ache over them? Didn't need proof, it just needed participation. The next night, I had a dream more. I think it was a dream. I was walking through a building I didn't recognize, but felt familiar. Like a school, maybe. Lockers lined the walls, but each one had a forum thread number scrawled across it in chalk. As I passed, they opened on their own. Each locker contained an object tied to a Ritalin inhaler, a pair of torn shoelaces, a cracked Polaroid. The final locker was a mirror, and inside it, I didn't see myself. I saw Jonah, sitting at a desk, typing furiously. Looked older. Tired, his lips moved, but no sound came out. Behind him stood a shadow, tall, unmoving, watching him type. When I woke up, the laptop had turned itself on again, and waiting on the screen was a message, pulsing gently in white font. Do you want to continue moderating? Is that word moderating? I used to think it meant oversight, control. But here, it felt more like ritual, being a caretaker of ghosts. If I clicked yes, I knew I'd be pulling the thing deeper, it's giving it more room. But if I clicked no, I didn't know what would happen. Maybe it would find someone else. Maybe it would make someone else. But before I could choose, the screen changed. A new thread had posted. By me. Titled Number 1001, Your Final Memory Isn't Yours. It was blank, waiting for input, waiting for me to write the confession it had already begun to shape. Be continued in Part 5, where the narrator is forced to relive not just past sins, but false ones, and learns what. Jonah tried to stop when he locked the forum down. The thread waited for me. That blinking cursor in the empty text box, mocking me, daring me to start typing. I stared at it for what must have been an hour, trying to remind myself that I was still in control, that it couldn't force me to do anything. But that wasn't true anymore. Control had slipped away weeks ago, maybe longer. The second I clicked yes on that riddle, I gave the forum permission. Permission to watch, to learn, to write. I hadn't written the last few posts it published under my name. I knew that now. Ah! The voice was close enough to fool me at first. But there were cracks, details I wouldn't have included, feelings I had never processed, but now suddenly felt real. I closed the laptop again and pushed it under the bed. That was my ritual now, use it, then hide it. Like burying a cursed book between sessions of possession, it didn't help. At this point, I'd see last light even in everyday places. On cereal boxes, in email spam, even once during a walk downtown, in a mural that, for a second, showed a phrase I recognized. Thread 889, the first time you lied about pain. When I blinked, it was gone. Then came the worst part. I started seeing people I didn't know, but who clearly recognized me. A man on the subway locked eyes with me and whispered, "You shouldn't have accepted his login." A woman at the grocery store brushed past me and hissed, "You wrote about me. You shouldn't remember." I hadn't written anything, but the system had, and it had done it as me. These weren't hallucinations. They were fragments of the same infection, bleeding through the layers, bringing more of the archive into reality. I went back to the forum the next morning, telling myself I'd just read, just observe. I wouldn't post. But the moment I logged in, the system didn't give me the option. The homepage had collapsed into a single screen, my post. #1001, your final memory isn't yours, and below that, a new line of instruction. You are only safe if you finish the story. I began typing. It was like sleepwalking. My fingers moved, but the thoughts didn't feel like mine. I wrote about a fire, about a girl named Mallory, about standing at the top of a staircase and letting the door shut behind me, trapping her in a room filled with smoke. I scribed the way the screams sounded when they echoed through drywall, the shape of her shadow in the hallway, the guilt. Here's the thing, Doy. Don't know a Mallory. I never lived in a house with a staircase like the one I described. There was no fire, but as I typed, I could feel it. The guilt was real. The scene felt so vivid, so complete. It hooked into some corner of my mind like it had always been there. And when I was done, the post timestamped itself, marked me as confession verified, and logged me out. After that, things got worse. I'd wake up with bruises I couldn't explain. Sleep paralysis episodes where I could swear I saw Jonah sitting at the foot of my bed. Eyes completely black, lips moving but making no sound. Once, I woke up, standing in my hallway, holding my phone, which had a recording open, static. Then my voice only, not me saying, "Memory accepted. Identity updated." I began to realize the truth. The forum didn't just collect guilt. It reassigned. It took the orphaned, unspoken tragedies of its previous users, those who had vanished, those who had gone dark, and handed them off to whoever was next in line. The memories weren't mine, but they were being installed like software, slowly, subtly overwriting who I thought I was. I tried deleting the files, reformatted the flash drive, wiped the laptop, even smashed it once with a hammer. But it didn't matter. The site always came back. On another device, on my phone, in a public library's computer, when I thought I'd escaped, I started seeing the I logo Jonah's symbol, the glass eyes surrounded by teeth drawn into the margins of books, on signs, carved into bus stop benches. I wasn't escaping. I was sinking. The final straw came when my mother called. She was crying. About me, but about a dream she had. She said she'd seen me as a child again, but younger than she'd ever remembered me being. In the dream, I was sitting in a dark room with a figure behind me, whispering riddles into my ear while I drew symbols in crayon. She said I kept repeating one sentence. I remember what didn't happen. She didn't know anything about Last Light. I'd never told her. And yet her dream mirrored exactly what the forum had been doing to me. It was spreading to people who never logged in. Just being near me was enough. I packed my bags that night and left town. No destination, just ... away. I thought if I isolated myself, maybe the connection would weaken. But when I checked my phone in the middle of nowhere, just outside a diner in Kansas, there was a new notification waiting. Moderator status pending. Jonah's seat is still warm. To be continued in part 6, where the final truths are pulled from the narrator's rewritten mind. And the forum begins to prepare its last riddle one that doesn't just take memories, but remakes reality. Around them, the roadside motel I found in Kansas was empty, too quiet for how full the parking lot looked. When I checked in, the clerk didn't ask for ID or payment, just slid a key across the counter without looking up. Room 117. I stood. They're waiting for him to say something, maybe a welcome, a warning, anything. But he just returned to his crossword puzzle, and I noticed something scribbled in the corner of it, a glass eye surrounded by teeth. I took the key without a word. Inside the room, everything buzzed with low-frequency noise. Not sound exactly, but a presence. Pressure in my skull, like static, was building behind my eyes. I left the lights off and sat in the dark with the laptop. Yes, I'd brought it. I don't even remember packing it, but it was there in the bag, waiting. When I booted it up, the homepage was gone. The interface had changed entirely. Now it looked more like a dashboard, with panels labeled Witness Queue, Unresolved Guilt, and Moderator Tasks. At the top, flashing in a dim red glow, was the phrase, "Jonah's seat is warm. Do you accept succession?" For hours I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I knew that if I typed even a single word, it would begin. The system didn't need a formal yes it, just needed activity. And deep down, I think I understood what the seat was. Not a role, not a title, but a threshold. Whoever sat in it wasn't just a moderator, they were the conduit, the lens, the next witness through which the archive could rewrite the world. I kept thinking of Jonah. All those notebooks, all those riddles, all those vanished users. I wondered if he had sat here like I was now alone, trying to decide whether to unplug or dive in. And I realized something that turned my stomach. Jonah hadn't been trying to preserve the forum. He'd been trying to contain it. The riddles weren't puzzles. They were locks, traps, threads that could only be completed by someone who'd take his place, but he failed. Or maybe he gave up. Either way, the forum didn't die with him. It just went dormant, waiting for the next one. I opened the Unresolved Guilt tab. It populated instantly. Hundreds of threads. Some marked partial, some abandoned, some tagged with a blood-red label that read Forced Residual. I clicked on one at random. The screen filled with paragraphs, written in someone else's voice, but my name was on the post. The story was about a car crash, a child thrown from the back seat, my hands shaking on the wheel. I'd never been in a crash, not like that. But as I read, I could smell the oil, hear the slow ticking of the cooling engine. Another thread. A man confessing to calling in a bomb threat during college finals because he couldn't take the pressure. That name again, mine. I hadn't done that. But the fear it described? The exact spiral of guilt. That felt real. It's real. It was like The system was reaching into every pocket of who I could have been, every fork in the road I'd forgotten, and assigning them to me like debts. I wasn't just reading confessions anymore, I was being burdened with them. And then ... it gave me the moderator feed. I wish I hadn't looked. It showed me the users who were currently online, or at least tethered. Their locations glitched in and out, names flashing red, some already tagged as fading. I saw Nora's handle, still active. I saw others too, strangers, and next to each one was a timer, counting down. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew that when it hit 0, something happened, something permanent. There was a final panel I hadn't dared open. It was labeled Thread Engine, New Confession Prompt. It pulsed slowly, like it was breathing, like it was waiting. I hovered my cursor over it, then moved away. But the screen flickered, and the window opened on its own. No code, no question. Just 5 words. Who did you forget to save? My chest locked, my vision blurred. I thought of Devin again, the boy at the lake. And then suddenly I thought of another boy, a kid I didn't recognize, Freckles, Buzzcat, crying in a school hallway. I didn't know who he was, but the guilt was instant, crushing. My brain scrambled to fill in the blanks. Had I bullied him, ignored him, reported him, helped him, or done nothing at all? That's the worst part. Not knowing, just feeling like I failed someone. And knowing the system would treat that feeling as fact. I shut the laptop, but it didn't matter. The sound of typing continued, even with it closed. My hands stayed. Still, but something was inputting data, writing me deeper into the archive. I turned on the sink in the bathroom to drown it out. That's when I heard the voice again faint from the drain. Not Elise this time. This one was deeper. Male. Voice familiar. It said, "You sat in the seat." To be continued in part 7, the final part where the forum executes its last rewrite. And the narrator must choose between preserving memory or destroying identity entirely. Let me know when you're ready. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even lie down. I sat in the corner of the motel room, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the closed laptop like it was a coffin that hadn't been nailed shut. The hum hadn't stopped. It low static like insects, and the wiring grew louder by the hour, seeping through the walls, vibrating the floorboards. I covered my ears and rocked like a child, trying to remind myself of who I was. Bin, my name, my face, my voice. But the memories were slippery, like trying to hold oil in water. They'd been tampered with, rewritten, resorted. The more I tried to recall specific details, the more my mind filled in blanks with the forum's version. At some point, just before dawn, the power flickered in the room. When it came back, on, the laptop screen was glowing blood red. Text, no menu, just a pulsing light. And then, slowly, a phrase faded into view. Final confession confirmed. Moderator integration complete. I didn't remember confirming anything. I hadn't touched the keys, but it didn't matter. The system had made its decision. I had been logged, indexed, and accepted. I opened the screen, and there it was. My final thread. Post I had no memory of writing, at least. Not with words, but the emotions in it. Those were mine. It talked. About a boy named Reed, my cousin, who drowned at a family reunion when we were both 9. Only I didn't remember having a cousin named Reed. I had a photo somewhere of me standing alone at that lake. No other kids, no lifeguards, but the story was too vivid to deny. It described the sounds, the way I hesitated before running. For help, the way I'd never told anyone what I saw pulling him under. And yet, ... nothing in my own memories confirmed it. The forum didn't care about truth. It cared about emotional weight. That's what it fed on. That's what it used to mold its threads, to claim new hosts, to recycle its horror through different voices. Jonah must have realized that late into his tenure, that he'd stopped being a guardian of stories and had become a feeder tube for something much bigger, something that needed shame and guilt, like air. After that final thread, the interface changed once more. It no longer looked like a forum. Now it resembled a control panel, a switchboard of unresolved narratives, user logs, timestamps, flashing like countdowns. And in the corner, alive. Feed. Dozens of tiny windows showing dark rooms, users sleeping, sitting at desks, crying in front of screens. I recognized one of them, Nora. She was sitting on her floor, face streaked with tears, whispering something I couldn't hear. The caption beneath her window read, "Last confession pending." Then came the final prompt. A screen filled with a single question. To clear the archive, one must overwrite. Choose the next seat. Beneath it, a list of usernames. Most of them were dormant. One of them was mine. Another Jonas. And at the very bottom, blinking underscore beside a blank space, waiting for me to type in someone new. Someone real. Someone I knew. I hovered my fingers over the keyboard. I could have typed anything. An enemy. A stranger. Even a made-up name. But the system wouldn't accept lies. It wanted a living tether. A real person to root itself in. One who had clicked a link, opened a thread, laughed at a story. Anyone who'd engaged Evan once. And I realized in horror, I'd seen enough names in the archive to damn almost anyone, even you, if you're reading this. Did. I typed. Jonah _0. The system paused. For a long moment, the cursor stopped blinking. Then the entire screen dimmed. A low, grinding noise came from the laptop, like gears turning in some distant basement. Slowly, a new line appeared. It read, "You cannot choose the dead. You must choose the forgotten." That's when it hit me. That boy I kept seeing red. He never existed. Or maybe he did once, briefly, in some forgotten branch of my own story. A half-formed memory, a discarded version of childhood that the system had salvaged and fed upon. The forgotten weren't lost, they were stored. Waiting. For a host, waiting for me. I never made a final choice. I slammed the laptop shut and left the motel before the sun could rise. I drove until the car ran out of gas and walked 4 miles through the empty back roads, trying to outrun something that wasn't tethered to a device but to me. I thought I'd escaped. But a week ago, I got a package in the mail. No return. Address. Inside, a burned flash drive, a single sticky note attached that read, "Moderator seat open. You were never logged out. I haven't plugged it in. I don't plan to. But sometimes at night, I hear the typing again. When I dream in posts, paragraphs, threads. My thoughts format themselves like forum entries, complete with subject lines and timestamps. And just yesterday, a friend texted me a screenshot. It was a forum thread posted under my old username, T_Gray, timestamped 3 days into the future. The title? You're reading this because he chose you? Some forums don't die. They wait. They hide in forgotten bookmarks, in old cache folders, in dusty backups of lost drives. They remember you. And if you've ever clicked, they're already writing your part. It started the same way these things always do with boredom. Too much time online and just enough desperation to ignore a bad idea. We were all stuck that summer. It's post-lockdown inertia, no internships, nothing going right. I was crashing on. A friend's couch in Atlanta broke, over-caffeinated, and spiraling through Discord servers at 3 a.m. like they were rabbit holes with no bottom. The one that got me was a half-dead community called Apocrypt_Juarez. Sounded edgy, but mostly it was ghost members and ancient download links. Dead torrents, old ISO files, some spammy ads for haunted bios, chips that were clearly fake. But one thread stood out. It was pinned to the top, marked in red, entitled, "Do not download cursed.exe unless you're willing to lose something real." Most people ignored it, but the first comment had hundreds of reactions. The op was a user named Meatmask9, and their message was brief. "This file doesn't mess around. We found it in a deep swap-hold black drive from a server that got wiped mid-boot. It runs once. No replays. Each level takes something. What you get is what you ask for. What it takes is what you didn't know you'd miss." Thought it was a stunt. Well-done bit of creepypasta roleplay, maybe paired with a Twitch stream or TikTok fake-out. But the link worked. It wasn't a torrent or a redirect or some sketchy redirected. It was a plain, tiny executable. 10.4 kilobytes, no icon, no metadata. Just cursed.exe. I didn't run it right away. I downloaded it to a sandboxed folder on my friend Lena's old ThinkPad. She didn't mind. She was just as into horror args as me, and we'd spent the whole summer collecting weird files and decoding cryptic puzzles from deep forum archives. She called them digital urban legends, and we made a game out of proving them false. But curse.exe was different. Every time we tried to scan it, the antivirus would freeze, not throw up a warning, just completely lock up. Analysis tools. One program returned only 3 words in the report, active when seen. That alone should have stopped us. But I was restless. I hadn't had a job since March. My bank account was in double digits. The only thing I was good at was finding obscure internet lore no one else cared about. I told Lena we should try it, that we'd document the whole thing. Maybe even stream it anonymously if it was good enough. She wasn't totally sold, but curiosity got the better of both of us. So we set up the camcorder, isolated the ThinkPad from all networks, dimmed the lights, and ran it. The screen went black for a full 10 seconds. Then, a window appeared, plain black background, pixelated gray border. The center of the screen held only one line. What would you sacrifice to play? That was it. No menu, no sound, no buttons, just a blinking cursor. I looked at Lena. She raised an eyebrow. I typed, time. Nothing happened. Then after a full minute, the screen blinked. New message appeared. Accepted, level 1 loaded, time deducted, 2.6 hours. We laughed. Lena called it decent psychological horror bait. But then I checked my phone, and the time was wrong. It was 3:07 a.m. before we ran the program. It was now 12:31 a.m. We had gone backward. We checked Lena's watch. Same, then we checked. The camcorder, its clock, had skipped ahead. Not in real time, but in chunks. It showed us staring at the screen for hours, unmoving, even though, to us, it had been maybe 20 minutes at most. That was the first moment I felt something deeper than fun. It was the first cost. The game began immediately after that. No cutscene, no splash screen. It's just a top-down pixel interface, like an old DOS strategy game. We controlled a blinking square white on a field of black and text prompts appeared above it. Each one was like a riddle. Find the mouth that doesn't speak. Trade memory for access. Choose one. Blood, bone, or name. We laughed at first, making random choices, thinking it was all aesthetic, till Lena said she had a headache. Not just a normal one, she said. It felt like she'd forgotten something important. Her eyes glassed over for a second. When I asked her what we had for dinner the night before, she couldn't remember. Neither could I. We thought maybe it was a side effect of playing too long. We exited the game more, tried to. The executable window wouldn't close. F4 didn't work. Task Manager opened and immediately shut itself. Finally, I just held the power button. The laptop shut down. We looked at each other, both of us unsettled, both trying to shrug it off. But then I opened the folder where the file had been and it was gone. No cursed.exe. No logs. Just a new file. A text file. Its name, level 1 _ cleared. TXT. I opened it. The message read, you sacrifice time. Time is now thin. Beware lost hours. Level 2 available soon. We both stared at the screen in silence. Lena asked me what time is now thin meant. I didn't know. We just sat in the living room, lights on, waiting for something to happen. When dawn came, we laughed it off again, pretended it was just a really well-done mind game, promised not to run it again. But a week later, a folder appeared on Lena's desktop. She hadn't downloaded anything new, hadn't touched the ThinkPad. The folder was named level _2 _ access granted, and inside it was a single image. A screenshot of our living room, taken from above. We don't own a ceiling camera. Lena didn't scream when she saw the photo. She just turned her laptop toward me in silence. It was worse that way. The image was grainy, black and white, taken from a height that didn't make sense. It showed us sitting on the couch in the exact clothes we were wearing at that moment, ollie from above, as if captured by a drone or a camera embedded in the ceiling. There were no timestamps, no file name, metadata. Just an unchangeable PNG file, uneditable, uncopyable, unable to be deleted. Tried everything. I asked Lena if she remembered installing any apps that might have hijacked her webcam. She said no. Besides, the ThinkPad we'd used was powered off, disconnected, and shoved in a drawer for the past week. But the file had come through anyway. The folder hadn't been there the night before. She was certain. And what made it worse was the message at the bottom of the image. In tiny red letters, almost missed at first glance, Level 2 begins now. What would you sacrifice to survive? That question haunted me. Not to play, but to survive. The phrasing had changed. The tone was darker, more direct. The game wasn't asking for participation anymore. It was offering a deal. Under threat? That was the moment we realized something had flipped. The game was no longer just a file. It was watching us. Didn't know how or through what medium. But it had breached containment. Whether through the laptop, the Wi-Fi, or something we couldn't understand, it had embedded itself in our space. Lena wanted to run a full wipe on both laptops. She was already Googling how to safely destroy SSDs, but I hesitated. Or maybe we should finish it. Document everything. See how deep it went. Maybe we could sell the story. Get in touch with a creepypasta channel or a found footage subreddit. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. You're talking about feeding it? She said. Like it's alive? You think finishing it will make it go away? I didn't answer. The next night, Lena had a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. Not just a trickle of full flow. It's bright red, watery, and sudden. She hadn't had one since middle school, but there she was, bent over the sink, tissue soaked. I rushed to help, but the moment my hand touched hers, the lights in the bathroom flickered. The bulb above the mirror buzzed, then popped. I jumped back. She didn't seem surprised, just exhausted. It's thinning us, she said quietly. It's pulling from something. And I think I just paid the price for not playing. I went back to the ThinkPad that night. Against better judgment, I powered it on and waited. The desktop booted like normal. No curse.exe, no folders. But exactly 1 minute after startup, a new window opened on its own. Plain text on a black screen. What would you sacrifice to open level 2? I should have shut it down again. I should have tossed it out the window, but I didn't. I typed, pain. The screen blinked. The text changed. Accepted. Pain uploaded. Nerve adjustments complete. Then the ThinkPad powered off. No fan sound, just dead silence. I sat there in the dark, heart racing, palms sweaty, expecting to feel something awful. But nothing happened at first. I stood up, walked back toward the living room, and that's when it hit me. My left leg gave out completely. No pain, just dead weight, like the nerves had been unplugged. I fell hard, scraping my chin against the edge of the table. My arms worked fine, my right leg too. But my left felt like it wasn't mine anymore, like it had been. Loaned out. I screamed for Lena. She helped me up, and we sat on the floor for hours. She kept asking me what I typed. I didn't want to tell her. I eventually did. She didn't say anything, just got up and unplugged every device in the apartment. But unplugging didn't help. That night, her phone, which she hadn't used all day, lit up with a new notification. It was just a black screen with one word in white: play. That was it. No app, no origin. Screen refused to turn. Off until the battery died. And when we plugged it back in, the phone was factory reset. All data gone. We left the apartment the next day. Stayed at an Airbnb across the city under a fake name. Lena wouldn't sleep. I kept drifting off and waking to static. Static, not imagined. Once I woke up to find her standing in the kitchen, staring at the microwave. She said it kept flickering a time that didn't exist, 99 to 99. Then she whispered, "We're inside a level already. It's not asking for sacrifices anymore. It's taking them." By day 3 in the Airbnb, Lena barely spoke. She'd taken to writing things down on yellow sticky notes and taping them around the room, reminders of what day it was, what time we arrived, what we'd eaten, even what our real names were. At first I thought it was overkill. But when? I woke up one morning and couldn't remember how we got there, whether we'd paid in cash or card. I realized she'd been right. Something was rewriting our timelines in the background, like save files being overwritten by a program that didn't ask for permission. The notes became our anchors. But even those started disappearing. I'd walk to the bathroom and return, to find half the notes gone, or worse, rewritten. One that used to say Tuesday, 3 p.m. arrived now. Read level 3 loaded. Time unstable. I confronted Lena about it, thinking she was messing with me, trying to push me out of my spiral. But the look in her eyes told me she hadn't touched them. It's treating our life like UI elements, she whispered. We gave it access. Now it thinks we're part of the interface. That same day, my phone, which I had smashed, replaced, and left in a completely sealed Faraday pouch, started vibrating. I don't know how. It was off, fully off, yet it buzzed. I opened the pouch. The screen was black except for one flashing line of red text. Choose your next. Loss, truth, face, or friend. I dropped it. Left it on the floor. Lena picked it up with a dish towel and buried it in the trash outside. But by the time we got back to the apartment, it was sitting in the middle of the kitchen counter. I finally said it out loud. We're not being haunted, we're being overwritten. Lena stared at me. You think it's copying us? She asked. No, I said. I think it's playing us. Running our lives like levels. It's using memory the same way a game uses, loading screens hiding the swap. That's when she pulled out a sticky note I hadn't seen before. On it, in handwriting. That didn't look like hers or mine, were the words, "You've already chosen, friend. Watch her fade." That night, Lena forgot her mother's name, not just for a second gone. She stared at a photo on her lock screen and didn't know who it was. I said her name aloud, reminded her of all the times she'd talked about her, the stories she told about her childhood. But Lena just shook her head slowly. Feels like I'm watching someone else's home movie, she said, like it happened. To a girl who doesn't exist anymore, I tried to undo it. I booted the ThinkPad again. I don't know why I thought that would help. Maybe I figured if we gave it more, it would release what it already took. The screen lit up, already in mid-prompt. Level 3. Offer truth to restore lost asset. Must be personal, must be yours. The cursor blinked, waiting. I thought about everything I'd never told Lena, the thing I'd buried deep. The one truth that followed me everywhere but never made it into the light. I typed, I let my brother die. No elaboration, just that. The screen accepted the input without confirmation. Then the laptop made a clicking noise, not digital. A real physical sound, like a Polaroid ejecting from a slot. A moment later, the webcam light came on by itself, stayed on for a full minute, then turned off. A file appeared on the desktop, recovered_truth.img. It was a photo of my brother, the same one from the memorial site. But in this image, I was standing next to him, and I was smiling. I don't remember ever being in that picture. I don't even remember the day it was taken. The timestamp said it was the day before. He died. I showed it to Lena. She didn't say anything. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "That wasn't meant for you. That was for it." I asked her what she meant. She pointed to the screen, to a message that had appeared just below the image file. Friend access restored. But memory trade incomplete. The lights flickered again. I could hear buzzing behind the walls like old fluorescent bulbs warming up. But we weren't in a building with fluorescent lighting. Lena sat down on the couch, clutching the sticky notes to her chest. "I think it's building something," she said. "A story, a level, a version of us that plays better." That's when the mirror in the hallway cracked. No sound, no impact, just a slow webbing of fractures across the glass. Like the apartment itself was glitching, or being rendered. I think Lena knew it was coming before I did. She started sleeping less, eating less, flinching every time a light flickered or the pipes knocked. The sticky notes stayed up longer, but they didn't make her feel safer anymore. I caught her staring at them with this blank, almost unfamiliar. Looked like she was trying to solve a puzzle she no longer recognized. When I asked if she was okay, She blinked and said, "Who's Lena?" She wasn't joking. Not fully. She said it with this tired confusion, like someone waking up in a house they didn't remember buying. That's when I realized she was. Slipping, not dying, not fading like in a ghost story, but corrupting. It's like a game character whose textures aren't loading right, or whose animations are skipping frames. Her voice still sounded like Lena, but her cadence changed. She'd pause in the middle of sentences, double back on words, sometimes say things twice without realizing. I think we should leave," she muttered one night while staring at the window, but we couldn't leave. We tried. Every time we packed, something was missing. Keys, wallet, car battery dead. Once, the door just wouldn't open. Like the level hadn't been programmed to let us out yet. I finally asked her if she remembered the day we met. She said yes. She described a bar downtown, trivia night, me wearing a worn Star Trek shirt. The problem was, we'd actually met on a Discord server for Vaporwave edits. We'd only met in person months after that. I said nothing. I just nodded and smiled. Because maybe the real Lena remembered that night. But the Lena standing in front of me now, she was a patch, a version, an update of something trying very hard to stay believable. I checked the ThinkPad again. I know I shouldn't have, but I needed to see if the game was still running behind the scenes. It powered on without a password. No boot screen. It's just a blinking prompt again. Level 4, initialized. Final player detected, trade required, identity beneath that too. Names appeared. Mine and Lena's? I didn't type anything. I couldn't. It already knew us. It wasn't asking, it was presenting. I closed the laptop hard and stuffed it back in the drawer. That night, I woke up at 3:33 a.m. to a sound I can only describe. As low, glitchy breathing like a voice played backward through a speaker underwater. Lena wasn't in bed. Found her in the kitchen, staring at the microwave again. The screen read 99 to 99, just like before. She turned to me and said, "Something's living in the walls now," and she walked past me into the bathroom and locked the door. She stayed in there for 2 hours. When she finally came out, she looked different, not dramatically, just slightly off. Like her expression had been rewritten. Like she was still Lena, but 3%. Recompiled. She didn't hug me, didn't ask if I was okay. She just sat on the couch and began peeling the sticky notes off the wall, one by one. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "They don't matter. I'm not the one who wrote them." Later that day, a new file appeared on her phone. Yes, the same phone we had destroyed. It's the same one that shouldn't have existed anymore. This time the file wasn't hidden, it was a video. It showed a room almost exactly like our Airbnb, but dimmer, dustier. In the center of the room sat Lena, or someone who looked like her, tied to a chair, blinking slowly as if sedated. Camera zoomed in on her face, then cut to static. The final frame. Just white text on black. "Which version will you save?" I didn't show it to her. I deleted the video, or at least I thought I did. But every hour on the hour, my phone buzzed. Even without signal, without battery half the time. Same video kept reappearing, slightly different angles. Each one closer to the Lena in the chair. Each one showing a little more struggle.
How the light revealing code was gone.
The game wasn't in the ThinkPad anymore. It was in us. Or maybe it had always been. Maybe downloading Cursed X just let us see it. That night, Lena didn't respond when I said her name. I walked over, shook her gently. She blinked slowly, like she was just booting up. "I'm not sure if I'm the one who's supposed to be here," she whispered. "But if I'm not, you still have to love me, right?" I didn't know what to say, so I just held her, tried not to look at the faint red light blinking from the ThinkPad drawer. By the end of that week, Lena stopped using her name altogether. When we went out for groceries on the rare days we even dared to leave the Airbnb, she paid in cash and refused to speak unless absolutely necessary. She'd glance nervously at mirrors, turn off screens in any room we entered, and once ripped the batteries out of a smoke detector because she claimed the blinking light felt too much like it was recording. I wanted to tell her that whatever was watching us didn't need cameras anymore, that it had learned how to be the camera, but I didn't. Some truths don't help. One night I came back from a supply run to find her standing barefoot in the middle of the kitchen holding a hammer. The ThinkPad had been placed in front of her on the counter open, powered on, though I had locked it in a steel lockbox. Before leaving, she told me the screen had been on when she walked into the room. Not booting up, not loading. Already on, waiting. She didn't remember opening the box, didn't remember typing. But the screen showed her name, Lena. Savan beneath it, a prompt blinking. Overwrite? Why N? She didn't click anything. She didn't need to. The screen flashed anyway, and her photo appeared a candid one, clearly from our living room, time-stamped just an hour earlier. But the background was wrong, slightly warped. The furniture misaligned, the lighting off, like it had been recreated. I saw it in her eyes. She knew. The game had made a copy. That night I went through every hard drive I owned. I checked browser caches, thumbnail folders, Discord attachments, every place I might have ever saved or sent a photo of her. And one by one, I found them altered. Not erased, but versioned. Her smile would be off, her eyes slightly too wide. In one picture from a Halloween party, she was wearing the same costume, same pose. But her hands were on the wrong arm's left hand where the right should have been. Like someone had reconstructed her from memory and messed up the render. The next day, Lena was gone. Not physically. She was still in the room, still breathing, still cooking soup with her favorite terrible recipe, but she wasn't Lena. Not entirely. She called me Ryan when my name was Tom. She asked if I still had the Jeep, even though I'd never owned one. I tried to remind her, showed her old photos, bank statements, texts, but she just stared at them like she was watching a show she didn't remember auditioning for, and then she laughed. Not mean, not scared, just hollow. Maybe I'm the backup, she whispered. Maybe I'm what it left behind. That night, I sat in the dark, alone, while she slept on the couch. The ThinkPad was back on the counter. I hadn't touched it. Showed a single screen this time. No prompt, no game window, just a message. Continue. I hovered over the cursor. Didn't click. Just stared. And then the screen changed without me doing anything. Second message. Final input required. Store original or proceed with revision. That was when I understood. The game wasn't asking for a winner. It never had. It was asking for a decision. One that only I could make. Keep what was left of Lena, whatever fractured, recompiled version of her, had been preserved, or try to roll back everything. Undo the changes. Back the real her, if that was even possible. But there was a cost. Below the message, a new prompt appeared. To restore original memory, you must sacrifice host file. Confirm deletion. User, Tom. I turned away from the screen. Walked into the living room and watched Lena sleep. Her breathing was slow, steady, her features soft and familiar. But she no longer mumbled in her sleep the way she used to. No twitching at bad dreams, no half-conscious request for water, just stillness, a calm that didn't feel earned. I sat beside her until morning, the prompt still burning in my mind. Delete myself to bring her back. When she woke up, she didn't recognize me, not even a flicker. She looked at me like I was a stranger who had broken into her life and rearranged her memories. And she asked, with the same fearful politeness you'd use on a possible intruder, "Do you live here?" I lied. I said no. I said I was just passing through. Later, she packed a bag, told me she had to go find someone. Wouldn't say who. She thanked me for being kind. Told me I reminded her of someone she used to know. Then she left. She walked out the door. This time the door opened. The level had ended, or maybe it had just loaded the next one. That night, the ThinkPad screen changed again. A new file appeared on the desktop. Tom saved deleted, and a blinking prompt. Player 2 remaining. Level 5 unlocked. I didn't leave the Airbnb. Not for days. I think I wanted to believe she'd come back. That she'd walk in with some half-excused, confused but smiling, carrying a bag of takeout like nothing happened. But she didn't, and her contact info disappeared with her. Her texts were wiped even from the cloud. My call logs showed nothing. It was like she'd never had a phone. My photos of her still existed, but most were different now. She'd be in the background instead of the front. Her face always just slightly turned or blurry. The metadata didn't match the memory. In some, I wasn't even present. That was when I noticed something worse. The ThinkPad's desktop had changed completely. It wasn't just a window anymore. It was a full UI dark mode, clean lines, a digital workspace that resembled a video editing suite or simulation dashboard. At the top left was a player counter, player 2 offline, player 1 active, and just below it, a file tree, each labeled with dates and folder names I didn't recognize. Until I opened one, it was a video of me, sitting on the couch, reading an old message thread. Only I hadn't done that. Not in days. And I wasn't wearing the same shirt I had. The more I watched, the more I realized it wasn't me. Exactly, it was a version. The angles, the speech, even the room lighting were off. Like a near-perfect deepfake running off stolen footage and best guesses. The next file showed me at a graveyard. Another version, another guess, and I began to understand. It was rehearsing. Me. I tried deleting the files, but they just reappeared under different names. SIM1, Revision 3, Tom Copy, _beta. Every attempt to scrub myself was ignored. Worse, the UI began adding annotations red text, overlaying the footage, marking facial expressions, tone shifts, pauses, lag detected, rewrite pending. I felt my stomach turn. I wasn't being observed anymore. I was being tested. Finally screamed into the room, into the screen, "What do you want from me?" And I swear, it answered not through words, but through a sudden change. The lights dimmed, and the ThinkPad fan kicked on full blast. A text prompt appeared, final build compiling, preparing environment. Please remain still. The room around me buzzed. I thought it was in my head until I saw the walls shimmer. Not visibly, not like a dream, but in a way you feel like the air itself is flickering between two frames. I ran. Out the door, down the hallway, into the street. I didn't stop until my legs buckled 3 blocks away, collapsing in a greasy parking lot behind a liquor store. I smashed the ThinkPad against a dumpster until it split open. The screen spidered, the casing cracked. I left it there, got in an Uber, didn't even care where I went, just away. But when I checked into the motel that night, the Wi-Fi login page greeted me by name. "Welcome, Tom. Resuming session." I shut the laptop instantly, heart pounding, checked my phone. It had the same prompt. So did the TV. I called the front desk and asked if their system had any smart integrations. They said no. Just basic cable and public wireless? You sure you're on the right network? I should have smashed everything then. I should have left the state, but it was already too late. I'd stopped being a user weeks ago. I was a build now, moving asset inside its runtime. I started seeing skips people glitching slightly in public, cars repeating movements, clouds reversing direction. Tiny things. Easy to dismiss if you didn't know the rules had changed, but the worst part wasn't out there. It was in the mirror. I stopped trusting my own reflection. Sometimes I'd look at myself brushing my teeth, and my mouth wouldn't move with the same rhythm. Other times I'd see my reflection blink before I did. Lag, like in a multiplayer match where one client is decenced. Then one morning I woke up, and the ThinkPad was beside me again. Whole, untouched, not cracked. The fan purred softly as it waited. The screen was already open. The UI was updated. Sleeker, cleaner. It had a new label now at the bottom. Story. Complete. Player 1 finalized. I didn't touch it, didn't dare, but I couldn't stop myself from reading. There were logs now, pages of them, every key press I'd made, every sentence I'd ever typed, every spoken word in front of a mic or near a screen. And at the very bottom, one more prompt, ready to broadcast? My hands were shaking. I reached for the power cable. But just before I pulled it, the screen flickered once more and I saw her. Lena, or maybe Alina, standing in a room that looked eerily like mine. Watching a screen that looked eerily like this one, she looked right at the camera. She whispered, "Don't send it." But the cursor had already moved. Not by me. It hovered over yes, and then clicked. After the click, nothing happened. At least, not in the way I expected. There was no explosion of code, no blue screen crash, no firestorm of feedback, loops, or recursive errors. Just a soft ping like the kind you hear when an upload completes. The ThinkPad's fan slowed. The lights dimmed slightly, then stabilized. I stared at the screen, waiting for the next horror, the next message, the next decision. But there was nothing. Just one quiet confirmation. Saved to archive. Story uploaded. Viewers. 1. I waited for hours, watching, listening. The clock ticked. Traffic buzzed faintly outside. But inside the motel, everything held its breath. Eventually, I left the room and walked to the vending machine, half expecting the hallway to stretch into something impossible, or to find Lena standing, barefoot under a flickering exit sign. But no, just a hallway, slightly cold, smelling faintly of pine cleaner and something metallic. When I returned, the laptop was still on. The viewer count had changed. Now it read, "Viewers 2," and beneath that, comments enabled. I scrolled. Down, there was only one message. It read, "I remember this, but I wasn't supposed to." That was it. No name, no account. Just a comment floating in the void posted by someone. Maybe Lena. Maybe me. Maybe a version of me from some earlier run. The days after that blurred. I tried throwing the laptop in the river. But the next morning, it was on the motel desk again. Dry, open, powered on. I smashed it with a crowbar. Came home from a laundromat trip to find it propped against my pillow. Eventually, I stopped fighting it. I left it on. Let it hum quietly in the corner. I lived around it. But I never touched it again. That's when things got worse. People started mentioning memories I didn't recognize. Friends would bring up things I'd supposedly said or done that never happened. A cousin said we'd gone hiking in Utah together. I've never even been west of Ohio. My old roommate emailed me a photo of the two of us holding matching trophies from a competition. I never entered, and in each photo or mention, I always looked the same tired eyes, same faint expression of confusion, like I'd known then too. But it wasn't just people. It was places. A bookstore I used to visit had a second floor known an entire cafe I didn't remember ever existing, as my childhood home had a porch swing we never owned. Even the streets in my neighborhood curved differently, like someone had clicked and dragged their paths slightly to make room for more story, more level, more game. Eventually, I stopped trying to track what was real and what wasn't. I started writing it down like Lena used to, only now it wasn't just sticky notes. It was journals, diagrams, folder trees. But they always ended the same way. Prompt. A save. A loop. I wasn't logging anymore. I was being logged. Cataloged, and then one night I got a call. No number. No sound at first, just faint static, like the inside of a cassette tape spool. Then a voice. Faint. Familiar. You let them watch. You let them finish it. But some stories aren't meant to be saved. Then silence. The line cut off. When I checked the call history, there was no record of it. But the ThinkPad had a new folder. Calls recovered _audio. Inside it, my voice, talking to myself. Only I hadn't said those words. Not yet. Think I understand now. The game never wanted to win. It wanted to be remembered. It needed someone to tell its story. Once told, it wouldn't need to repeat. It could end, but not for me, because I was part of it. The narrator, the file it used to speak. That's why the laptop never broke. That's why the prompt clicked on its own. It didn't need me to finish. It just needed me to host it. So here I am, writing this. One last message. One final checkpoint before the screen fades for good. You've probably already seen parts of this story in posts, screenshots, maybe even videos leaked onto obscure forums or YouTube channels nobody claims to run. Maybe you heard a distorted version of Lena's voice in a stream and didn't realize. It may be the red blinking light on your webcam. Maybe it just pulsed once out of rhythm, just enough to signal you're being watched. 2. Don't try to uninstall it. Don't try to delete me, because if you're reading this, it means you already played, you clicked the link, you read the thread, you opened the folder, you let it in, you made your first save. I know how ridiculous this sounds, but I've always believed the internet had spaces that weren't meant for everyone, quiet corners. Broken pages, ghost threads that didn't belong to any working domain. Places that somehow kept breathing after they were abandoned. Some people look for UFOs, others go ghost hunting in real life. Me, I hunt dead links. I scroll archive dumps for pages that should have been wiped years ago. It's not glamorous. Most nights I'm in my dorm with 3 monitors, 2 mugs of cold coffee, and a hoodie that hasn't seen laundry in a week. But every once in a while, something weird pops up. And that's what happened the night I found thread number 383. I was halfway through a subreddit crawl on an old scrape of RDEP Signala, or a themed community that got banned in 2024, hosting some controversial live args that allegedly went too far. I'd seen the usual stuff, chat logs about fake hauntings, strange puzzles linked to YouTube live streams, audio distortions. Most of it was creative, clever even, but not. Scary, not really. But this night was different. I wasn't logged in, just browsing from a burner account, when I noticed something strange in the thread index, a subreddit listed with 0 members. Titled simply R Thread 383, no description, no banner. The only post was pinned, the dead are typing. I clicked it without thinking, expecting some elaborate creepypasta or maybe a private community that had been incorrectly flagged as open, but the post was just ... text. Raw, almost like someone had copied it out of a chat transcript. It was full of these short blurbs, people claiming that dead friends or family members had messaged them through old accounts. At first I thought it was fictional. Users with names like nocnarstudio, old_mailman, and FR1daygirl described getting DMs. From accounts that had been inactive for years, messages that started with fragments of personal memory, favorite songs, private jokes, strange photos, the kind of details no one else would know. I thought it was brilliant. Dark, well-written, maybe a collective horror experiment, or some unlisted digital seance. Then I noticed the post had no comments. Not one, but there were timestamps comments. Had existed, they'd been deleted. Every single one. And at the bottom of the post was a warning in bold. 3 replies only. At anymore, and they don't stay dead. I read that line twice. It wasn't just a story, it was a rule. I'm not new to horror roleplays. I've seen how ergs lure you in with fake limits and pretend risks. I figured this was one of those don't reply to the ghosts mechanics meant to draw people deeper into the game. So I posted, from my burner Reddit account, I commented under the thread, "Is this active? Asking for a friend?" Literally. It stayed up for less than 10 seconds before vanishing. No mod removal, no flag, just gone. Not even visible in my user history. Then I got a message. Not through Reddit, through my college email. The subject line read, "Thread received. Don't reply twice." I opened it, expecting a phishing scam or prank link, but it just said, "Your response has been seen. We don't like to be seen." At that point, I still thought I was in on a game. Maybe someone had figured out my real email from my Reddit footprint. Maybe this was a smart bit of immersive fiction, but I couldn't stop thinking about the original post, the stories inside it, especially one in particular. It was from a user called T_Rains, who described receiving a message from their late sister. The account deactivated for 5 years, suddenly reactivated with a simple hi. At first it was only small talk, vague greetings. Then, the sister began referencing things from their childhood details the user had forgotten. One message said, "I found the dog tags behind the heater. They smell like you." Another said, "Don't take the train next week." Not that one. The last message was simply, "I'm tired of waiting in between. Can I come back now?" The user's final line chilled me. I replied a 3rd time, I shouldn't have. I woke up and the heater was turned on, and the tags were on my chest. Still, part of me was intrigued. If this was a game, it was the best one I'd ever seen. If it wasn't, well, I hadn't seen anything truly impossible yet. So I searched the subreddit again. This time I viewed the page source. There, buried in a collapsed comment node, was something like code, but it wasn't JavaScript. It was plain text, formatted like a conversation. Archived MSG log U gray left. Are you there? No return. I never left. You, gray left. Why can't I see you? You no return. The connection's slow. Your fear interrupts. That line hit me weird. Your fear interrupts. It sounded believable, not just spooky. Like someone was actually describing the glitchy boundary between thought and transmission. Between grief and presence. I minimized everything. Shut down my browser, cleared cookies. I even unplugged the Ethernet cable. But something was already different. My laptop fan spun louder. The screen pulsed with a flicker that didn't seem hardware-based. And then, while sorting through an old documents folder I hadn't touched in months, I saw it. A Word file titled thread383_intro.docx. I didn't put it there, I opened it. Just one line inside. You used to cry when I hid under the bed? Do you still? It didn't make sense at first, until I remembered something awful. Memory I had buried for years. My brother Jeremy. He used to crawl under my bed when I was 6, grab my ankles and make me scream until Mom came running. It was our game, our scary game. He died when I was 9, car crash. Instant, closed casket. I'd never told anyone about the ankle game, not a soul. I thought maybe I'd typed the line years ago, stored it in a document by accident, but when I checked the metadata, it said the file was created today, and the author field said Jeremy_383. I didn't open the file again for the rest of the night. I closed my laptop, slid it under my bed, and stared at the ceiling for hours, trying to convince myself I was just tired. That it had to be some deep-seated memory bubble to the surface. Maybe I'd mentioned the ankle game in an old blog post, or a half-finished story, and some Arge creator scraped it through a data leak. It happens more often than people think. When you use the same username across platforms, your digital trail spreads out behind you like spilled ink. I couldn't explain was the author name. Jeremy_383. My brother never used computers. He died in 2006. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I imagined him under the bed again, waiting with those pale fingers. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something heavier. Guilt, maybe. By the time morning came, I'd almost convinced myself it wasn't worth investigating. But I'm not good at letting things go. That's why I'm in digital anthropology. Why I spend hours scouring abandoned forums and 400 forward pages for pieces of dead culture? Because the internet doesn't forget. It buries. It folds over and mutates, sure, but the core is always there, like a haunted foundation under a gleaming new website. So after my 11 a.m. lecture, I went back to my dorm, locked the door, pulled the shades, and opened the file again. This time, there was a second line. Can you come back to the closet? I'm still there. The moment I read that, something in me snapped. The closet. He meant the old hall closet in our childhood home. The one we turned into a fort during storms. We'd pile up blankets, steal flashlights, and pretend we were hiding from monsters. Sometimes we were the monsters. That memory hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was pain, because after he died, I refused to go near that closet. My mom eventually sealed it off after I had a screaming fit during a thunderstorm. I was 9. I hadn't thought about that day in over a decade. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time, and I did something I shouldn't have. I opened a new text file and typed, I remember the closet. You were always braver than me. A few seconds later, the original file updated on its own. A third line appeared. I'm not braver. I'm just stuck. Why did you stop talking to me? I don't remember crying, but I must have because my keyboard was damp. I hadn't told anyone, not my friends, not even my therapist, that I used to talk to Jeremy at night after he died. Just whispers in the dark. Good night, Jeremy. I miss you. I'm sorry. It started the week after the funeral and didn't stop until the day I moved into the dorms. I never heard anything back, of course. It was just me bleeding into the silence. But this file, this was not silence. I should have stopped there. I know that. 2 replies. That was the rule. But something about that question cracked me open. Why did you stop talking to me? I didn't know how to answer. I still don't. So I did what I always do when I can't fix a feeling. I searched. For it, I opened my browser, logged into my burner Reddit, and checked the rthread 383 page again. It had changed. Still no members, still no sidebar. But a new post had been added, time-stamped 15 minutes earlier. 2 replies. 1 more left. Make it count. This wasn't just a script anymore. It was tracking me. It knew what I had written. I double-checked my network settings, verified my firewalls, even ran a packet inspection. No suspicious activity. No outbound signals. But the feeling that something was watching didn't go away. I closed everything again, pulled the battery from my laptop just to be safe, and decided I'd take a break. I needed to ground myself, to go outside, be around people, anything that reminded me the world was still physical. I went to the campus cafe, ordered an overpriced chai, and sat by the window with a book I had no intention of reading. That's when I saw the notification on my phone. It was from my notes app. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't touched it all day. But the top line now read, Jeremy just added a note. My hand shook as I opened it. The note was short. I see your coffee. You still drink it too sweet. I dropped the phone. He was watching me, or someone was pretending to. Be him in a way I couldn't explain. I changed my drink order at random almost every day. No one at the cafe knew me well enough to remember my habits. This wasn't something guessable, not something you could scrape from social media. I was panicking. I left the cafe without finishing my drink, walked back to my dorm in a haze, barely remembering how I got there. When I opened my door, something was off. Not broken, not obviously disturbed, just wrong. My chair was an inch too far from the desk. The shade I'd pulled down earlier was now up halfway, and on my pillow was a small object I hadn't seen in years. A blue Lego piece. One of the stubby 4-dot bricks. Jeremy and I had a huge bin of them as kids. When he was mad at me, he'd always leave a single blue brick on my pillow as a warning. Our own little code for I'm annoyed, but I still love you. I never told anyone about that. I held it for a long time. It was too long. The sun dipped below the windowsill. I knew I should have burned the Lego or thrown it into the river or flushed it down the toilet, but instead, I placed it on my desk. Then I opened the text file again. There was no new line this time. It's just a new cursor blinking beneath the last message, waiting, like he was giving me time, letting me decide whether I would type the third. Reply, I haven't yet. Not as I write this. But the screen's still open, and the cursor still blinks. And I keep hearing tiny, plastic clicks at night, like someone's building something under the bed. I didn't reply right away. I wish I could say I resisted for days, that I had the strength to shut it all down and forget the whole thing, but that's not what happened. I made it to the 3rd day. Barely. By then I'd stopped sleeping. The Lego piece remained on the desk, untouched, but somehow warmer than it should have been. I'd catch myself glancing at it like it might shift when I wasn't looking. Worse, the messages weren't staying in the digital world anymore. My roommate, who's barely ever home, texted me late Tuesday night saying, Hey, did your brother stop by earlier? I thought I saw a kid in your room. She doesn't even know Jeremy existed. I never told her. The 3rd reply wasn't dramatic. I didn't cry over it. I didn't spend hours composing the words. I just sat down at 2:23 a.m., opened the file, and typed, I'm sorry I left you in the dark. That was it. It felt real. It's like the thing I needed to say since I was 9. I hit save, and for a full minute, nothing happened. Then the cursor moved on its own. A new message appeared, slowly, as if typed by uncertain fingers. It's okay. I brought a light this time. Immediately after that, my speakers hissed. It's not loud but constant, like static from an old tube TV. I hadn't touched them, hadn't even powered on the output chain. But the sound was unmistakable. Beneath it, layered in the background, something else pulsed. A rhythm. Faint but human. A whisper pattern I couldn't translate, but that felt almost like breathing. I turned everything off at the wall, disconnected the surge protector, even pulled the power from the backup battery. Still, the sound continued. That's when I realized the noise wasn't coming from my speakers. It was coming from under the bed. I didn't check. I know what kind of story this is. You don't look under the bed when the game starts playing back. I grabbed my backpack, left my laptop behind, and walked across campus to the library. I stayed there until sunrise. I told myself it was all stress hallucination from too many hours on caffeine and no sleep. But when I came back to my dorm the next morning, the air inside smelled like old cedar and plastic. The smell of our childhood closet, the one we used. As a storm fort, I couldn't take it anymore. I backed up every file, every log, every saved message, and went to the computer science building where I knew a TA who helped manage the isolated network lab. I lied and said I was working on a speculative fiction thesis about digital hauntings. He didn't care. Just gave me access to one of the sandbox machines in the basement, completely air-gapped. No network, no ports, no hardware beyond a keyboard and a local-only drive. I uploaded the thread file to it, opened it, and waited. Nothing happened. No text, no update, just silence. I almost felt stupid, but then I saw the cursor, not the flashing kind. Physical flickering glow just barely visible in the reflection of the black screen. Like a ghost of a light where there wasn't one. I leaned closer. That's when the machine typed, "I can't hear you in here. It's too far. Go back." And then the file closed. Automatically, I reopened it. Empty, my stomach dropped. I hadn't shut the door behind me. I ran back to the dorm. My laptop was open. The file was on screen. But it wasn't the same file. The name had changed to reconnect_final.docx. Inside were photos now. Not stock images, not memes. Photos from my childhood. Me and Jeremy, playing in the yard, crouched in the closet, asleep on the couch during movie nights. Images I had never digitized. No one could have uploaded unless they'd been scanning photo albums from a house we hadn't lived in for 10 years. The timestamps on the file said 1970. We weren't even born then. I started to feel sick. Like vertigo mixed with guilt and static. My head buzzed with pressure, like my brain was trying to receive a signal on the wrong frequency. Last page of the file was just a single quote, "Now that we're together again, do you want to come see where I've been?" And below that, a button. A literal rendered button embedded into the dock, like some broken macro link. It said, YES. I didn't click it. I shut the lid and backed away. I packed a bag and told myself I was going to sleep at a friend's. Place off campus, somewhere far away from my dorm and that damned screen. But as I reached the door, my phone buzzed. New message, unknown number, just a photo. It was a blurry shot from behind my desk chair. The screen in the frame showed the button, lit, waiting. And in the bottom corner of the image, reflected in the screen's glare, was the shape of a small face. Watching, grinning, I slammed the door behind me and left. Took a bus, rented a room in a cheap motel an hour away. No tech, no Wi-Fi, just silence. For the first time in weeks, I slept. And when I woke up, there were no messages, no updates, no whispers. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I'd cut the cord in time. But as I reached into my backpack for a pen, I felt something plastic and sharp at the bottom. I pulled it out. It was the blue Lego brick. I stayed off my devices for a full week after that night at the motel. No laptop, no phone, no school email. I even withdrew from my fall classes. My advisor was concerned, but I told him I needed a mental health leave. No one pushed me for details, not that they could have understood. How do you explain that you think you've been emailing a ghost? Or worse, that the ghost is learning how to reach through devices and drag things out with it? I bought a prepaid flip phone and left the rest of my tech in a box under the bed at my friend's apartment. She didn't ask questions. Just let me stay on the couch. I told her I was getting over a breakup. That part wasn't entirely untrue. I was grieving someone all over again, someone I'd already buried. But even with all that space, it still followed me. Not with screens or messages this time, but with memories. I'd be sitting on the couch reading a paperback, and suddenly I'd smell warm rubber, like the mats we used to play on in the basement. I'd hear small taps against the radiator at night, like Jeremy's old plastic ninja figurines clattering in slow motion. And one morning, I woke up to find my notebook filled with sketches I didn't remember drawing. Half-formed faces, circles made of tiny letters, and one sketch of a closet door, ... wide open, with two eyes drawn in the dark space behind it. Started Googling again. I had to. Not on any device linked to me, and always in incognito from public computers and lockdown terminals, but still, I couldn't shake the need to know if anyone else had broken the rule. If someone had replied more than 3 times, that's when I stumbled on a locked Discord server called Dead Backloop. It was listed in a Reddit comment thread from years. Archived in a snapshot site, barely readable. The invite was dead, but the comment had a backup key hidden in it, buried in Morse code. I spent 3 hours decoding it by hand and finally found a working invite. The server had only 12 members, all silent. The channels were strange. Names like doorframe signal and body syntax, repair. In one, someone had posted a looping image of a timestamp clock flickering at impossible speeds. In another, there were entire text logs and structured, broken conversations. But they were all so similar. People begging for help. People saying their dead parents had reached out. One message caught me hardest. He came back, but now he won't go away. He answers questions before I ask them. Another user responded, "You typed 4 times? They're not dead anymore. They're live. You left the door open. I didn't type anything. I just lurked." Then a DM came through, even though I hadn't said a word. The user's name was _in from below. Their profile image was a glitched out silhouette, just a stretched face, mouth open. The message read, "You left him at the closet. It's not where he died." I froze. There's no way anyone could have known that. Jeremy died in a car crash, but he had hidden in the closet during thunderstorms. That was his safe place. It had become mine too after he was gone. I wrote my reply in a private text doc instead of messaging back. I needed to see it typed out before I committed to it. Where did he die then? I never sent the message. Didn't need to. A moment later, a new folder appeared on my USB drive. It was titled exit node _J. I hadn't plugged that. Drive into anything since the motel. It wasn't even in my pocket, it was in a backpack I'd locked in the closet. But there it was, mounted on the desktop of a shared university machine. Folder contained a single video file. crashpath _preview.mov. I played it. No audio. The screen showed a rural intersection. It's empty. Faded signage. The kind of place you only drive through once, then forget forever. The timestamp was 2 minutes long. At the end of the clip, a child walks into frame, stops, looks directly at the camera, and smiles. It was Jeremy. He was older than he'd ever been. I paused the clip, scrubbed through it, frame by frame. And there it was, in one corner of the shot, mirrored in the glass of a road sign, my own. Reflection. Standing beside him. But I hadn't been there. I hadn't filmed this. I hadn't even been in that state when he died. Yet somehow, I was. The reflection even wore my current jacket. The one I'd only bought this semester. That night, the dreams came back hard. Not nightmares exactly, but recursive ones, where I'd wake up into a new version of my dorm, or my childhood room, only to find that something was off. Furniture wrong, walls too long, windows that looked out into unfamiliar skies. Went one dream, Jeremy was sitting on my dorm bed, swinging his legs, humming something that sounded like modem noise. I asked him how he got here. He said, "I followed the messages. You sent them, remember?" Then he held out his hand, and it was full of blue Lego bricks. Every time I touched one, I heard my own voice replaying old apologies, memories. Regrets looped like bad voicemail. When I woke up, my throat was raw. I'd been talking in my sleep. My friend said I kept saying, "Three's not the end. Three's not the end." She joked that maybe I was dreaming about puzzles again. I didn't tell her the truth. I couldn't, because I was beginning to think the rule had never been about saving you. It was about containing them. Once I'd broken the seal with that third reply, the line didn't just free, it opened. A door, a hallway, a signal path. Something was walking through. I didn't tell anyone what I saw in that video, not my friend, not the Discord group, not even myself, not in any tangible way. I closed the file, shut down the terminal, and left campus without logging out. The idea of logging out suddenly felt wrong, like breaking eye contact during a test of will. The thought that Jeremy was in that crash site, still aware, still watching, ... it gnawed at me. Not like a nightmare, but like a memory I'd never owned, a piece of grief I'd picked up from someone else's body. I started wondering if the version of him talking to me, guiding me, was even really him anymore, or if it was something using his shape, his words, to make me keep replying. That night, I checked into a different motel across town. Didn't want to return to my friend's place. Something told me it wasn't safe for her anymore. The first red flag came as soon as I stepped into the room. There was a blinking light on the desk, not the smoke alarm. Not a wall plugged, just a red LED blinking from the nightstand drawer. When I opened it, I found a hotel notepad and a cheap pen sitting perfectly parallel. One sentence had been written on the top page. "I heard you. I want to talk to you." There was no name, no signature. But below it, in faint imprint from the previous page, I saw another message scratched into the paper fibers. "Can you find my brother? His name is Greg. I'm so tired of sleeping." The pen twitched in my hand when I picked it up. Just once, probably a nerve twitch. That's what I told myself. I didn't write anything. I left the drawer open and sat on the floor with my back against the wall, trying to make sense of what this meant. Jeremy, I could understand he was mine. My grief, my guilt. But this was someone else's pain bleeding through. Or worse, a voice that had never belonged to anyone real in the first place. Around 1:30 a.m., I turned on the motel TV to drown out the silence. Analog static greeted me, no channels available, but a few seconds in, the static shifted. Cleared, not tuned, just altered. I saw shadows forming inside it like silhouettes just behind the noise. One leaned forward. Then a voice came through the TV speaker. It wasn't loud, just a whisper I could barely register. "You let him in. He's showing us how." I unplugged the TV, turned off all the lights, and hid under the scratchy motel blanket like a scared kid. And for the first time in weeks, I cried without trying to fight it. Not because I was afraid for myself, but because I realized how wide this was spreading. How many other people were receiving messages? How many had broken the rule? The subreddit had been hidden, sure. But what if it was only hidden to keep it from spilling? What if the rule of three wasn't about contact, it was about containment? The next morning, I woke to find another message. This time written on the bathroom mirror in fog, even though I hadn't taken a shower. It said, "It's not just Jeremy. Look behind your eyes." I packed my things in under 3 minutes and walked out the door without checking out. As I passed the reception desk, the woman behind the counter smiled too long, then tilted her head and said, "He was a good brother, wasn't he?" I didn't reply, just kept walking, and as I stepped into the parking lot, I'd left off 4 days buzzed in my pocket. I shouldn't have had it on me. I thought I left it behind, but there it was. And the screen lit up with a new message. Not a number, not an app, just raw text on the lock screen. Reply 4. Greg connected. He remembers the stairs. I nearly dropped the phone. Greg. The name from the motel drawer. My hands shook as I turned the phone off again, pulled the battery out completely, and threw it into the storm drain behind the motel. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. I wasn't just a participant anymore. I was a node, a bridge. And whatever I had opened, whoever I had answered. They were using me to reach others now. Later that day, I returned to the dead backloop Discord. New users had joined. 4 new icons, all with dead threads. Usernames like Voition Steps, Sleepwash Wrong, and one simply titled, "And Greg." No typing indicator, no intros. But their presence was unsettling. Each had the same profile image, a black and white photo of a stairwell cropped from a different angle. When I clicked in Greg, I found a bio line that read, "She remembered me. I'm waking up now." And then came the ping. A new channel opened automatically. It was titled Recipients. Inside was a list. Names, usernames. Some I recognized from Reddit, others from the server. At the bottom of the list was mine, but it wasn't just my screenum. It was my real name. And next to it, a status tag. Open port. Wyatt had shut it down to delete the account and close the browser. But before I could even move the mouse, a new message appeared under my name. One I didn't write. "She's helping. We're almost through." Spent the next 2 days in motion. Different hotels, borrowed Wi-Fi, no electronics that didn't run off the grid. I even pulled cash from a dormant checking account. Hadn't used since high school, just to make sure my normal banking activity wouldn't trace me. It didn't matter. The messages stopped arriving on devices, but they kept coming anyway. I found one carved into the condensation on a diner ketchup bottle. He found stairs again, so many to climb now. Another was inside a library book, handwritten between pages of marginalia. "Greg is real." These weren't glitches or AI or anything clever anymore. This was intent. These messages were being placed where I would find them. And then came the voices. Not loud, not even clear at first. Just tiny hums under white noise, barely perceptible changes in airflow. Vents clicking in patterns. Radio static skipping certain frequencies. I began to recognize a kind of rhythm. In the nothingness. It wasn't just that the dead were speaking. It was that they were teaching each other how to speak back. Like they'd found a language that could pass through any signal, any medium. And I had given them the lexicon. The turning point came on a Thursday evening, just as the sun dipped into the power lines above the highway. I was staying in a cheap motel that had no online presence at all, one of those places with yellowed blinds, flickering hall lights, and a clerk who only accepted cash. I'd been there less than 4 hours when the room phone rang. Not my cell, not an app. The literal landline. It rang exactly once, then silence. I picked it up anyway. There was a pause on the other end, then a child's voice, soft and warm, said, "He's in the hallway. Can I let him in?" I slammed the phone down and locked the door. I stuffed a towel under the crack and turned on every light. When I looked out through the peephole, there was no one there. Not at first. Then, just before I turned away, a shape moved into view. A boy maybe 9 or 10 years old, standing still as stone. No expression, just ... waiting. I didn't recognize him. Not really. But there was something horribly familiar about the way he tilted his head. The way his arms hung at his sides, one clenched tight around what looked like a Lego figurine. I backed away from the door and braced myself against the bathroom sink, trying not to scream. My reflection in the mirror stared back, wide-eyed, pale, trembling. But then I noticed something wrong. My reflection blinked before I did. Out. After. Not with before. I closed my eyes, held my breath, and counted to 3. When I opened them, the mirror showed nothing, just an empty room. I turned around slowly. The boy was inside. He didn't move like a child. He didn't breathe. Ain't. Just watched. Then, finally, he spoke. "We're lining up now. The order's almost complete." I asked who he was. His mouth twitched at the corners. "I'm someone else's reply. You opened your thread. But we're all part of one feed. One list." I tried to back away, but my legs didn't respond. The air felt thick, like moving through syrup. My thoughts slowed. My hearing buzzed, and he smiled. "You were the best kind. The kind. Who types fast. The kind who believes. That's what we needed." I passed out. Or maybe I didn't. It's hard to tell now. When I came to, the room was empty. No child, no figurine. But in the sink was a piece of paper soaked in water, the ink bleeding down into strange shapes. I dried it as best I could and held it to the lamp. Only one thing was still legible. Thread number 385 preparing sink. Identity match, 98.9%. There was no signature. I ran again. Not just from the motel, but from the entire state. Hitched a ride with a trucker headed west. Slept in his cab. Told him nothing except that I was being followed by someone online. He laughed. Said his niece had gone through something similar. Started talking to her dead friend through a Tumblr page. Said it got bad fast. Said the friend started leaving notes in her textbooks. I asked what happened to her. He didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, "Sometimes I think she's still the one driving." And he smiled like he hadn't. Just said something horrifying. I don't know if he was joking. I don't know what's real anymore. Posts on our thread 383 are gone now. Scrubbed clean, even in archive sites. But new ones have appeared. Threads with no titles. Forums with no visible admins. Users with strings of digits for names, posting entries that feel ... off, emotionless, but copied. Like someone trying to replicate grief they've never actually felt. I read one that described a girl on a couch, typing to her brother. The details matched mine. The same carpet, the same Lego. Only I never posted that story anywhere. Tonight, while staying at a truck stop halfway to Nevada, I found a message taped to my windshield. Folded notebook paper. Inside, a single line written in pencil. "I'm Greg. She found me. Your turn now?" I burned the note. Right there in the truck stop parking lot. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my lighter, held the paper up to the wind, and let the flame take it before I could read it again. The edge curl black was the most relief I'd felt in weeks. But even as the ash scattered into the dirt, I knew it wouldn't matter. The act was symbolic at best. Thread number 383 wasn't a message anymore. It was a state, a signal. Something recursive that kept folding back on itself every time you tried to sever the line. All I'd really done was confirm I'd received the message, that I'd read it. Greg's thread was now tied to mine. I tried to go home after that, not to my dorm, but to the house I grew up in. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I returned to the place it started, if I stood in front of that closet and faced whatever. Memory I'd reanimated die could shut it down, contain it. But when I arrived, the house was gone. Not destroyed, not condemned, just gone. The lot was still there. The trees still stood, the same rusted mailbox tilted like always. But in its place stood a small brick building I'd never seen before, a self-storage facility, chain-locked, no signs, the same address, same coordinates, as if the thread had rewritten the past, one location at a time. Walked the perimeter twice, no lights, no cameras. The only thing that stood out was a steel door with a keypad and a plaque above it. So the plaque read, "Records, thread 383, intake 0042. I shouldn't have gone in. I knew that. But I think part of me wanted to see it. I knew by then I wasn't going to escape this. Not truly. I pressed random numbers. The lock clicked open after 5 digits. Not because I guessed correctly, but because it was waiting for me. Inside was cold and still. It's not dusty, but sterile-like. A data center or an archive vault. Rows of small drawers lined the walls, each labeled with screen names and dates. Some had real names scribbled beneath them. Some I recognized from the server. Others I didn't, but their names scratched at something in me, like Daisy Avu wearing someone else's face. At the far end of the corridor, under a dim yellow light, sat an old CRT monitor on a steel table. A mechanical keyboard was already plugged in, no mouse. The screen blinked as I stepped closer. Prompt appeared. Final message? Just that, no instructions, no option to exit. My fingers hovered above the keys, cold and heavy. I didn't. Want to answer? Not really. But I also knew that the only way to finish the thread was to give it closure. That's what it had always wanted. A final line. Closing loop. I typed 5 words. "I'm sorry. You can rest." The keyboard clicked louder than it should have. The screen blinked. Then a long pause. Then one final response. Accepted. Greg is complete. The monitor powered down. The lights dimmed. I waited for something terrible to happen. For whispers in the dark or figures in the corners, but nothing came. Just silence. I left the building and didn't look back. I walked for hours, didn't remember where I parked, didn't even care. The only thing I remember clearly is the stillness that followed, like the signal had gone quiet for the first time in months. That peace lasted 3 days. On the fourth, I woke up to a sound I hadn't heard since I was a child, a gentle tapping under the bed. Slow, rhythmic, familiar. I sat up, heart frozen in my chest. It wasn't aggressive, not like it had been. It was almost playful. Leaned over the side of the mattress and whispered, "Jeremy." No answer, just a soft sliding sound, then silence. I reached under the bed slowly, hand brushing dust and old receipts until my fingers closed around something small and hard. I pulled it out, a single red Lego, not blue this time. Red, the warning color. My phone buzzed an hour later. Despite being brand new, new number, brand new account, there it was, a message, no sender. Just a line of code in the subject. Thread number 384, ready. Below it, the message, "You were a good bridge. One more step. It's one more person. We only need one more." I threw the phone into the sink and smashed it with the heel of my shoe. Then I disconnected the internet at my apartment permanently, removed every wire, every device. But the static didn't stop, as the hum was still there in the vents, in the water pipes, in the bones of the walls. That's when I realized the truth. The rule had never been about 3 messages. That was just a delay. A dam. It wasn't a warning, it was a ratio. A ratio of signal to silence. 3 messages slowed the breach. 4 opened it. 5 made you part of it. Now I can't tell if I'm the one still writing this, or if it's someone using my voice typing from the inside out. I haven't seen Jeremy again. Not as a shape, but I feel him. And others. Greg. The girl from the ketchup bottle. The face. In the stairwell, they're waiting. Typing. Listening for someone to answer. Someone to cross their 3rd reply. Someone like you. And if you're reading this, that's one message. I used to think data was just data. Bits, bytes, folders full of vacation photos, essays no one read, or spreadsheets someone forgot to back up. When you do recovery work like I do, you get used to people's entire lives boiling down to documents, pictures, and sometimes downloads too. It's boring, it's routine. But looking back though, there was nothing routine about what I pulled from that hard drive in 2022. I got the laptop from a police auction. They post batches online every couple months, stuff seized from crime scenes unclaimed for years, eventually listed as scrap. Most people don't realize just how easy it is to win a bid. I've scored ThinkPads for $20, MacBooks for $50. This one came in a shattered box, labeled property of evidence not cleared. The kind of thing that would spook a reseller, but not me. The laptop itself was a black 2011 Dell stickered, with an old university tag. Battery dead. Hinge. Cracked. BIOS locked, but I bypassed that. Drive encrypted with Veracrypt. Again, not a problem. I've cracked tougher. What caught me off guard was how cold the metal felt, even after being in my apartment for hours. Cold in a way plastic can't fake. Like it remembered something. I'll skip the boring stuff. Mounting the drive, scanning sectors, carving out partial files. Most of it was junk PDF syllabi, corrupted most files, some surveillance folder marked "Do Not Open." But there was one partition that didn't match the schema. It was labeled simply Eidolon. Inside, just 5 files. No extensions. All scrambled names like %A98LK. One of them, when opened in a hex, editor had human-readable lines scattered in the chaos. Lines like, "We are the teeth, you are the eye." The archivist does not forget. You are now seen. Timestamps are lies. Look behind. I thought it was a prank. You find weird stuff all the time, old args, dead drop text puzzles, creepypasta zip files. But there was a link embedded in the code. It's buried under layers of red herrings and false headers. A. Onion address. Not Tor compatible at first glance, but I had tools. The address took me to a page titled Layer 9 in jittery ASCII art, beneath which blinked a black glass eye surrounded by jagged, crooked teeth. It didn't feel like a joke. The page didn't load in pieces like most onion sites. It just blinked into existence. I remember my heart thudding weirdly when it appeared, like I was seen. There was only one link. Start archive. I clicked it. The screen blinked. My browser crashed. But before it did, a folder appeared on my desktop titled session_01. It hadn't been there before. I opened it, expecting nothing. Instead, a dozen subfolders, each time stamped with days and times that hadn't happened yet. In the future, some were mere seconds ahead. At that exact moment, I got a text from my friend Nick. "Hey man, that horror clip you sent, WTF, happened IRL like a second later. You good?" Only I hadn't sent Nick anything. I hadn't spoken to him in 3 weeks. I checked the sent folder on my phone. A video had gone out from my number. It showed Nick at his front door, fumbling with his keys before looking up sharply like he'd heard something. That exact moment, caught from behind him, like from a street cam or a drone. It ended mid-glitch. I called him. He didn't answer. I texted. No reply. I checked Instagram. His last story was 30 seconds ago. It showed his hallway light flickering and the caption, "Someone's at the door?" That's when it hit me. The files weren't just showing possible futures. They were recording them. And they'd already started. The worst part? That blinking eye symbol, the one on the site, was now in my notifications bar. Replacing the Wi-Fi icon, I tried everything. Reboot, safe mode, reinstall. The folder wouldn't delete. Every time I wiped it, it reappeared under a new name. index_02, index_03. That night I had a dream. At least I thought it was a dream. I was in my living room. Normal, except for one thing. Every window showed a different version of the same room. In one, I was asleep on the couch. In another, I was at my desk. In the last, I was staring at the ceiling with glassy, unblinking eyes. And behind me, ... was the archivist. I only saw it for a second. Tall, bent backwards, spine cracked in. Segments like someone had overbent a metal slinky. Where its face should have been was a hollow socket filled with broken lenses. In the center was that same glass eye, watching me. I woke up sweating, but my laptop was back on, the fan humming. Another folder had been created, session_02. Inside it, a live stream thumbnail, titled You. I clicked it. It showed my apartment. From above, I hadn't installed any cameras. The live stream froze just after midnight. I must have stared at it for 10 minutes straight, waiting for it to refresh, to buffer, to do anything but hold on that single frame of me sitting at my desk only. I wasn't. I was standing. I was upright, facing the camera. But in real life, I was still slumped in my chair, hands shaking on the mouse. I moved slightly, testing it. The screen version didn't move, kept looking. It didn't blink. And I swear the corners of its mouth, my mouth, curled upward the longer I watched. I slammed the laptop shut and shoved it under my bed. That should have been the end. But of course, it wasn't. Looking back, though, I should have known something was seriously wrong the moment the folders started organizing themselves. Not just reappearing, but categorizing. I hadn't told anyone about the hard drive, and yet, when I went back to check my desktop later that night, because of course I did, curiosity beats fear every time I found a new directory tree under. A folder now called sessions_completed. Inside were video thumbnails of places I recognized but had never filmed. My street, my hallway, the gas station I stop at every Thursday. Each one time-stamped, each one labeled, and each one showing something just slightly off. In one, there's a man in a gray hoodie standing at the edge of the street facing away. He's not doing anything, not walking, not checking his phone, just standing, watching. In another, the gas station clerk I've spoken to a dozen times before is frozen mid-conversation, mouth open, eyes wide, like someone paused her mid-sentence. But the weirdest clip was from the building lobby. It showed a woman in a janitor's uniform, someone I'd never seen before, dragging a mop behind her. Only the mop wasn't touching the floor. It was hovering a few inches above it, swaying, like it was caught in water. I tried explaining it to Nick. The next day he'd finally responded to my texts with a single, "What the hell was that video?" and then went quiet again. I called him. He picked up. He sounded weird, like he was far away. Like there was static in the room, but not on the line. And he said something that chilled me more than anything else up to that point. "You didn't record that, right? Because I saw myself watching the video. I was on the screen too. Never sent you that. Someone's faking us." I didn't sleep much that night. The laptop was still under my bed, but I swear I could hear the fan running. I told myself it was in my head, but sometime around 3 a.m., I got an email to my personal inbox.
No sender.
No subject, just an attachment. Single image file named acknowledged, PNG. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was a screenshot of my inbox. The exact inbox I was looking at right then, with that same email open. The cursor frozen over the file. I moved my mouse. The cursor in the screenshot moved too. That's when I realized it wasn't a screenshot. It was a live stream. It's of me looking at myself. In real time. I'll skip the part where I unplugged everything, flipped the breakers, and stuffed the laptop into a duffel bag in the freezer. What matters is that the next morning, when I got to work, something else had changed. My coworker Sam didn't show up, no call, no text. His desk was still there, half-eaten bagel and all, but his chair was pushed back like he'd gotten up and never returned. I asked around. HR said he'd quit the week before, just left a sticky note that said "too loud" in the quiet and walked out, but I'd seen him yesterday. We shared coffee, talked about the Knicks. I even texted him that night hour. Thread was full of dumb memes and screenshots. Now the thread was gone. His number wasn't even in my contacts. Later that day, a client brought in an old external drive, said it wouldn't mount. Routine stuff. I took it back to my station. Hooked it up and froze, because the drive wasn't empty. It had a folder titled recovered_users. Inside it was a subfolder named Sam_Horvitz. I clicked it open. There were photos frame grabs from work, from meetings, from video calls, but not from this timeline. In these, he was wearing different clothes, speaking to people I didn't recognize, even using an ID badge I'd never seen. One video was just him in a bathroom mirror, whispering something to himself over and over. I played it 5 times before I understood what he was saying. Don't answer if the eye is open. Don't answer if the eye is open. Don't answer. That night, when I got home, I found my apartment door slightly ajar. Nothing was missing, but something was wrong. The air smelled like burnt copper. My monitor, my main one, hooked to a separate machine I never used for recovery work, was on black screen. Just text in the center. Session 03 in progress. Do not interrupt. I should have walked away. Should have packed a bag, gotten in the car, and driven until the gas ran out. But I didn't. I sat down, clicked the mouse, and watched as the screen slowly faded to show a room I didn't recognize. At first, it looked like a server room racks, and racks of black towers blinking red. In the center was a pedestal, and on the pedestal, a jar. Inside the jar was a glass eye, floating, watching. I didn't sleep at all after seeing the eye in the jar. I sat there in the chair, just watching the feed. It looped every 7 minutes. Same pan across the server room, same pedestal. Same faint noise in the background, like whispering, but too compressed to make out. Every time I blinked, I swore the room changed just slightly. Once the red lights were green, another time the pedestal was empty for exactly 2 frames. Then the eye returned, always floating, always centered. When I finally pulled myself away from the desk, my body felt heavy, like I'd been somewhere physically exhausting, like my muscles remembered more than I did. The next morning, I had every intention of ditching the drive, wiping the laptop, and pretending none of this ever happened. But when I went to the freezer to get the duffel bag, it was gone. No laptop, no bag, no frost marks, just a carton of eggs and a box of frozen waffles. I live alone. I don't have guests. And I know without a doubt that I put that thing in the freezer. That was the only moment in this whole thing I remember letting out an actual scream, not because it vanished, but because when I turned around, the laptop was already back on my desk, open, running, logged in. There was no login screen, no boot process. It was just ... on. And in the center of the screen, a new folder. This one called Dissonance. Inside were 6 MP4 files each, named with a different date. What struck me immediately is that none of the dates had happened yet. One was 3 hours in the future, another a full week ahead. I opened the first file, dated just a few hours out. The crawl on the bottom mentioned a car crash on I-78. I recognized the intersection. Then the feed glitched, and a frame, just one frame, showed a figure standing on my balcony. Don't have a balcony. I jumped up, looked outside, scanned. My walls, my ceiling, my closet, nothing. Just my studio apartment, silent as always. But the next time-stamped video was more disturbing. It showed me sleeping, viewed from above, no sound. Then, about halfway through the recording, the camera slowly began to drift closer to my face. Not zoom, drift. Like something was physically floating toward me. And just as it reached the side of my head, the audio kicked in. A clear voice, my own, whispering, "Don't wake up. You're already inside." I backed away from the screen, heart racing, hands shaking, trying to convince myself it was all some elaborate prank. Maybe a rogue script, or a deep-fake program someone seeded into the laptop. But it felt too real. The lighting in the videos matched my actual bulbs. The blinking light on the surge protector flickered at the exact same beat. Looked down at the floor, at the rug, and noticed something that hadn't been there the night before, to faint black marks in the carpet, like the edges of a tripod. As if something had been standing there, recording me. I decided to get out. I grabbed my coat, my phone, my keys only. The keys were missing. I always dropped them into the bowl by the door. Habit. I even checked the footage. Sure enough, the keys were there in one of the future clips. Sitting in the bowl, but not anymore. It was like the timeline had ... split. Whatever I was seeing in these folders wasn't predicting the future anymore. It was writing it, changing it, versioning it. I got so desperate I tore apart my entire apartment. Found the keys stuffed in the pocket of a jacket I haven't worn in years. At that point, I didn't care about the laptop or the files or the symbols anymore. I needed answers. Real ones, not whatever this ARG from hell was trying to serve me. I called my old friend Maya. She used to be big in the digital forensics scene before she got out. She always said one day something on the dark net would go too far. She was the kind of person who kept encrypted backups and never connected her clean machine to Wi-Fi. If anyone could help, it was her. Maya didn't want to meet at my place. She didn't want to meet at hers either. Instead, we met at a public park in broad daylight with no devices. Just paper. She insisted I write down what I'd found. No screenshots, no files, no links, just words. She didn't react until I mentioned the phrase, "We are the teeth, you are the eye." That's when she physically pulled away from me, stood up, and started packing her bag. I asked her what it meant. She said she didn't want to know, but she'd heard it once before, years ago, from someone who'd gone missing. The missing person was her ex-colleague, Devin. He'd been obsessed with a hidden node buried beneath the Tor stack of theoretical space where encryption protocols fail and raw packet data starts behaving erratically. He called it Layer 9, said it was like a digital abyss. No consistent rules, users couldn't be traced, but if you accessed it long enough, it would begin. Answering back, Devin vanished one night mid-forum post. No warning. His last message read, "It's watching me through the echoes." Maya never found his body. But weeks later, she received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid of her, sleeping. That's when she cut ties with everything. Quit the forums, burned her equipment, went analog. Until I pulled her back in, she told me flat out, "If you see the glass eye more than once, it's already too late. You're being indexed, recorded, categorized." That's what the archivist does. It doesn't kill you, not right away. It studies you, builds a version of you, eventually replaces the version that you think is real. I asked her what I should do. She looked at me with the saddest expression I've ever seen and said, "If it's already building a session tree, you need to cut it off. Now, every second you let it run, it's syncing, mapping, recording timelines. If it completes a cycle, you're done. I asked what done meant. She didn't answer, just left. Walked out of the park and never looked back. That night, a new folder appeared. This one wasn't on my desktop. It was on my phone, named You Are Ready. It didn't contain videos. It contained audio. The first file was labeled heartbeat_0.wav. It was my own heartbeat, slower than it should have been, off by a beat. The second was worse. It was labeled Maya_exit WAV. It was her saying goodbye. But she'd never said anything aloud. It's not while we were in the park. It's not on the phone. Somehow, it had recorded her thoughts. After hearing Maya's voice on that audio file words, she never actually said out loud, I turned off my phone and left it in the kitchen drawer. I didn't just shut it off, pulled the SIM, removed the battery. That was the only way it felt safe. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed a threshold. Like something inside the laptop, or maybe inside me, had moved beyond watching and started ... remembering. Mapping not just events, but intentions. I thought if I ignored it, maybe it would stop. But that same night around 2:37 a.m., my desktop tower unconnected to the drive, to the laptop, to anything that had touched layer 9 booted itself. I hadn't set a wake timer, hadn't even left it plugged in. And yet, when I walked into the room, the screen was already on, glowing faint blue in the dark. On it was a window I didn't recognize. Just text. Plain white font over a black background. Welcome back. Session trio for active. I scrolled down the window, heart pounding, not fully in control of my body anymore. The next line appeared automatically, like someone was typing in real time. You have been seen 417 times. You remember 41? You suspect 6? You regret 3. You survive 0. There was no keyboard input, nothing from my end. It was like the machine was speaking at me, with a memory of our time together far deeper than any local save could explain. Each number felt personal, like it had been tracking not just my behavior, but my awareness of being watched. Many times had I looked directly into my webcam at night. How often had I spoken to myself, thinking I was alone? The machine knew. The archivist had been indexing every suspicion I'd had. I thought back to a time a few weeks earlier when I woke up convinced someone had whispered my name. I blamed a dream. But now, that moment returned with terrifying clarity. My own voice calling me from the foot of the bed. I remember sitting up and seeing nothing. But the image of the hallway light flickering briefly showing. What looked like a hand just around the corner snapped into focus like it was happening again. Had that been one of the 417? Was that an unremembered viewing? I went to check my door cameras, but my home security system had reset itself. All footage wiped, all settings reverted. The only remaining clip was corrupted and played nothing but static with an overlay that read, "Redundancy breached." Desperate for proof I wasn't hallucinating, I called Nick again. This time he answered on the first ring, but his voice sounded ... flattened, compressed like a bad VP filter. When I asked where he was, he gave me an address I didn't recognize and said, "Just come, I'll show you what I saw." "Bring the laptop." I refused. He insisted. He kept repeating the phrase, "It's safer if we compare trees." That's what convinced me he shouldn't have known about session trees. I'd only learned that phrase from Maya. She hadn't shared it anywhere, especially not with Nick. Still, against better judgment I went. The address turned out to be an old data center outside Newark, New Jersey, one of those brutalist concrete cubes, long since abandoned and reclaimed by weeds and graffiti. The front gate was rusted shut, but the side door had a padlock someone had clearly snapped. With bolt cutters, I stepped inside with a flashlight, feeling like the dumbest horror movie cliche alive, but something pushed me forward. If this was the sorcerer, even a relay maybe destroying it would help. The inside smelled of burnt metal and mildew. Dust hung in thick, dry beams wherever my light passed. Server racks stood like gravestones, most stripped for parts or covered in grime. but one rack toward the back of the room was humming. Lit. Online. Cables snaked from it into the wall, like veins feeding an open wound. The power source wasn't obvious. There were no generators, no external lines, but that rack pulsed with activity. My flashlight flickered the moment I aimed it directly at it. I walked closer and saw, beneath the mainframe, a CRT monitor. Embedded in the rack's belly, on it, the eye, surrounded by teeth, spinning, watching. Then the monitor blinked and showed a live video of me from the server room's ceiling. There were no visible cameras. I turned in place, trying to spot any sensor, any lens, but saw nothing. The monitor updated again. File path appeared. X. Witnesses Nicholas. Gray stream. Clicked into it using the clunky trackball embedded on the rack. There were logs. Logs of conversations between Nick and me. Ones we'd never had. Emails we'd never sent. One of them was dated tomorrow. It said, he brought the drive. We're ready to mirror. And beneath that, another line, session tree 05 equals full. That's when it hit me. This wasn't tracking us like spectators. It was duplicating us. Creating shadow versions, digital replicas of our behavior, thought patterns, speech, even mistakes. The sessions weren't archives. They were construction blueprints. And once a session tree filled, the original version of the person wasn't needed anymore. That's what happened to Devin, to Sam, maybe even to the janitor I saw. In the gas station footage, all versions overwritten, replaced, mirrored. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat, heart thudding so hard I felt lightheaded. I tried to find Nick in the building. Searched every corridor, called out, no answer. But in the back storage area, behind rusted shelves, I found a backpack. Inside, his phone, his wallet, and the exact same laptop I'd recovered from the auction, except this one still had the evidence tag on it. Dated 2 weeks ago. That's impossible. Mine had that tag too, but I'd removed it days earlier. I stood there, holding both laptops in my hands, trying to understand how they could exist at the same time. And then one of them turned on by itself. No power source. No battery. The screen blinked on and displayed a single word, merge. I left both laptops there, ran to my car, drove to towns over, and threw my SIM card into a storm drain. When I got home, the lights in my apartment were already on. I never leave them on. My spare laptop was on the table, logged in. A note appeared on screen just as I entered the room. Welcome back, NICK. I stood frozen in my apartment doorway, staring at the words on the screen. Welcome back, Nick. My name isn't Nick. The system knew that. The laptop, my spare, clean machine, never connected to the recovery gear, never used for darknet crawling, shouldn't have known anything. And yet there it was, logged in, welcoming the wrong person. My mind jumped to a dozen bad conclusions. What if I'd been overwritten already? What if I was Nick now, or some fragment of him wearing my skin, reliving his patterns without knowing it? I rushed to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection didn't glitch. My movements were mine. At least that's what I told myself. I yanked the power cord from the laptop and held the power button until the screen blacked out. Then I unplugged my router and pulled every Ethernet cable from every port. No network, no signal, no data. If there was a version of me trying to sync from elsewhere, I was going to starve it. But even in the silence of the disconnected apartment, the fear didn't fade. I could still feel it an itch at the base of my skull, like someone whispering. In my own mental code, rewriting things I hadn't noticed were broken yet. That night, I slept with the lights on and every device powered down. When I woke up, one of the bulbs had burned out. Only one. The one above my bed. Later that morning, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally I don't answer those. But something in my gut told me it mattered. I picked up, expecting a spam call, but instead I heard a voice I hadn't heard in 2 years. My old boss, Tasha, from my first IT job out of college. We'd parted on weird terms, after I'd reported. some shady server usage that mysteriously disappeared before anyone else could see it. She sounded out of breath. She said she'd seen my name flagged in the bunker logs. I didn't know what that meant. She told me not to ask over the phone. She gave me an address, said bring the drive and come alone. Address she gave was in an industrial park on the outskirts of the city. It's a nondescript gray building with no signage, just a keypad lock and a rusted doorbell. I knocked twice and waited. When the door opened, it wasn't Tasha who greeted MIT. It was a young guy, maybe 22, wearing a coffee-stained hoodie and holding what looked like a Faraday cage laptop. He introduced himself as Josh, said Tasha was inside, but he had to scan me first. I half laughed, thinking it was a joke, until he pointed a thermal camera at my chest and asked me to hold still. After a few seconds, he lowered it and waved me in. Inside the building was a war zone of tech racks of old hard drives, tin-foil-lined walls, a mess of exposed boards and battery-powered fans. Everything screamed paranoid engineer, but I understood now. The archivist wasn't just some glitchy, creepy pasta. It was active infrastructure, sprawling, intelligent, self-replicating. And these people were trying to fight it. Tasha sat me down, looked me straight in the eye, and asked how many folders I'd seen. I told her 4, maybe 5. Her face darkened. She said, if it's already assigning you multiple timelines, we might be too late. She showed me a screen-and air-gapped computer with no network connection, just a manual input terminal. On it were logs from other infected users. One had survived 8 sessions before going catatonic. Another never made it past the 3rd. His devices began duplicating his voice across phone lines even after he cut power to everything. The scariest one, a woman from Lithuania, apparently vanished in real life, but still showed up in online photos fresh. Ones every few months. Always blurry, always in the background. Tasha said the working theory was that once the archivist maps enough of your behavioral fingerprint, it doesn't need your body anymore. It just uses the best version of you in whichever stream fits its index. That's when I made the dumbest choice I could have made. I asked if we could reverse it. If we could trace the sessions back to their point of origin and sever the link. Tasha hesitated, then said maybe, but only by triggering a rollback at the point of first contact. In my case, that meant returning to the exact version of the Eidolon folder that first opened Layer 9, she said they had isolated. The seed structure of the initial payload on a mirrored drive, but the drive wasn't local. It was in a cold storage bunker, an actual ex-military data vault, off-grid, 2 states away. Someone had to boot it manually. I volunteered before I could think it through. Josh came with me, bringing an RF scanner and a set of paper only. Instructions. No phones. No GPS. Just handwritten coordinates. We drove through the night. Every turn felt heavier. I kept imagining that whatever part of me was already mirrored was getting angrier the closer I got to deleting it. Twice. We had to stop and reset our directions because strange loops in the scanner began repeating coordinates we'd already passed. Once, we drove for exactly 23 minutes down a highway before realizing the mile markers were going backward. When we arrived, the place looked like a bunker from a nuclear war. Heavy concrete steps leading to a steel hatch. Old signage and faded Cyrillic. The keypad was mechanical, no network. No chance of remote breach. Josh input the code, and we descended into a freezing chamber lined with servers that hadn't been powered in years. Dust coated everything. But one server, Unit 92, had been wiped clean recently. A note taped to the side said, Eidolon Instance 01 archive locked. Do not reboot. We booted it anyway. The machine took a full 5 minutes to spin up, blinking red, then yellow, then finally green. When it did, the screen displayed a single prompt. Roll back now? And I hesitated. Josh put a hand on my shoulder. Pressed Y. The machine buzzed once. Sharp, high-pitched tone filled the room. Lights flickered. Then the screen went black. No success message, no confirmation, it's just dark. Then my phone, remember, the one I'd left back in my kitchen drawer, battery removed. Drank. No number, no caller ID. Just a single line of text blinking on screen. You are not the original. I dropped the phone. Looked at Josh. His nose was bleeding. He hadn't even noticed. A second later, he collapsed. I don't remember carrying Josh out of the bunker, but I know I must have, because the next thing I remember clearly is kneeling outside the hatch, gasping in cold morning air while his body lay slumped on the gravel beside me. His pulse was faint, but steady. He had a shallow gash above his eyebrow, likely from where he hit the server rack. I tried to wake him up, shaking his shoulder, calling his name, but he didn't respond. What worried me most wasn't the injury, it was the way his eyes moved behind his closed lids. It's fast, erratic, like he was watching something, ... or being watched. I called Tasha using the burner number she'd written down, but the line went to a pre-recorded message. No voicemail. Just a distorted voice on loop saying, "This number is no longer valid. Please check your session key and try again." It wasn't a normal message. That was a system-specific error, a darknet failsafe. It meant the number had been scrubbed, erased, either voluntarily or remotely. And the fact that my phone, yes, the one I'd removed the battery from, was now ringing again in my glove compartment, felt like the last warning shot. The display just said "me" and block text. I didn't answer, but I watched the screen. It rang 33 times before stopping. No voicemail, no missed call notification, just ... gone, like it had never happened. I tossed the phone as far as I could into the woods bordering the bunker. I didn't watch where it landed. I didn't want to know, because for the first time in this whole ordeal, I was certain of something terrifying. The archivist didn't just record timelines. It could now rewrite them. And I had no idea how many of mine it had already revised. On the drive back, Josh mumbled in his sleep. Most of it was gibberish code fragments, stream addresses, strings of hex that meant nothing without context. But one phrase kept repeating. The fourth one wakes up. The fourth one remembers. I wrote it down. I didn't know what it meant yet, but my gut told me it mattered. We reached the edge of the city by nightfall. That's when I noticed the first real glitch. A billboard I passed every day, advertising a local injury lawyer, now showed a completely different ad, one I recognized from a different city altogether. And the slogan was wrong. Instead of "here for you," it now read, "We index the pain." I thought maybe I was just tired. Maybe my brain, overloaded by everything, was misfiring. But the deeper into the city we drove, the more wrong things looked. Street names slightly altered. Logos tweaked just enough to be unfamiliar. My apartment building still stood, but it was missing the fire escape on the north side. I parked 2 blocks away and stared at it for a long time, unable to convince myself I was home. When I finally stepped inside, the air felt ... heavier, like everything had shifted by one frequency. The lights flickered longer. My fridge made a sound it had never made before, a low, pulsing thrum that stopped the moment I stepped near. I checked my email next. I hadn't dared look at anything digital since we left, but something about the way my screen lit up made me think I had to. My inbox was full of unread messages from people I didn't know, subjects like Session 6 invitation, confirmed, and archive drift log request. One message caught my eye. "Nick," the other, "you is better at this. Let him finish." I clicked it. The body of the email was empty. No sender, no headers. I refreshed. It was gone. My sent folder showed a reply I hadn't written. "He's trying. Let's give him one more pass." That's when the pain started. Not a headache. Not a muscle cramp. This was a deep throbbing pulse behind my eyes, like something trying to stretch its way out from behind my vision. I stumbled to the bathroom, expecting to see blood or burst capillaries, but my reflection wasn't bleeding. It was smiling. I wasn't. But the version of me in the mirror he was. Subtle at first, then broader. I turned my head slowly to the left. He turned slightly faster. Deliberately asynchronous. My knees buckled. I hit the tile floor and stared. Up at the ceiling, a crack had formed in the paint. But the crack was too clean, geometric, a perfect right angle, a code-fracturing reality. When I came to, It was morning. Josh was gone. No note, no message. His backpack and scanner were still by the door, but the couch he'd crashed on looked untouched. I checked the hallway cameras. All the files were corrupted. The only frame still visible was from 3:13 a.m., a shot of my front door open and a figure standing in the hallway, facing away. Not Josh, not anyone I recognized. They were wearing a coat I'd never seen before, but it looked familiar, like something I'd once owned. Their left hand was tucked into the coat pocket. Right held something shiny, small, maybe metal, and their head was tilted just slightly like they were listening. I ran a system sweep across every device I owned, reformatted all drives, pulled firmware logs, router history, even the BIOS activity records. What I found nearly stopped my heart. There were access timestamps from before I woke up. Not. Just on my machine's butt, on a drive I hadn't touched since 2019. Buried in a drawer. No network, no power, no interface. But it had been accessed, the only file on it. A photo of me at my desk, taken from behind. And in the reflection of the monitor, the archivist. Closer now. I stayed in the apartment for 3 days after Josh disappeared, afraid that leaving would only make it worse. That whatever had taken root inside my digital life might follow me through cell towers, smart traffic lights, even strangers, devices. I shut off the power, blocked the vents, lined the walls with foil and blankets like Maya once described in one of her old rants about M leakage. But none of it mattered. The laptop powered itself again on the second night. No outlet, no battery, no boot sequence, just black screen. Then white text in that same familiar, clean font. Final session tree compiled. That phrase haunted me. It felt so calm, so indifferent, like an obituary with no emotion. I didn't know what final meant exactly, whether it was done collecting, done building, or done with me. But I knew, deep in my gut, that something had changed. I wasn't forgetting things. I was remembering things that never happened. I'd catch myself recalling moments I never lived. Arguments with a roommate I never had. Dreams of places I've never visited that left real sensations behind. Smells, tastes, a cut on my knuckle I didn't remember getting. Like it had been there for days. I tried calling Maya again. Every number I had for her returned a dead signal. Then I remembered her original warning. If it completes a cycle, you're done. And I started to wonder, had she even been real in the first place? Or was she a construction too? A mentor inserted to lead me through a narrative the archivist needed completed. After all, she was the one who told me about the session trees. The one who sent me to the server. What if that wasn't resistance at all, but part of the indexing process? It got worse when I looked into my own background files, birth certificate, medical records, high school transcripts. Every document still existed, but details were different. My blood type was listed as a B negative in one scan, then a positive in another. My middle name was wrong on 2 forms. I found a resume I'd never written, claiming I worked for a cybersecurity firm in 2018. That never happened. I was working retail then. I know I was. I remember those nights behind the register. But when? I searched the address of that old job. The entire strip mall had been demolished in 2016, 2 years earlier than I worked there. The newspaper said a gas leak had leveled it. No survivors. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a haunting or even a virus. It was something much deeper. The archivist wasn't invading our lives. It was overwriting them. Retroactively. Selectively. Precisely. Like it had access to the root directory of reality. And all it needed was enough data to start writing new code. I checked my laptop again. A new folder had appeared on the desktop. This one simply titled, Me. Inside were hundreds of video files, all named mirror _, followed by strings of digits. They were all me, speaking, moving, living. But none of them matched anything I remembered doing. In one, I was crying in a car I didn't own. In another, I was in a hospital gown, laughing with someone who called me Jamie, not my name. Each one was longer than the last. Each one a little closer to who I thought I was. The final video was labeled mirror_final.mp4. I opened it. The screen flickered and displayed my apartment, exact angle, exact lighting. It was live. I waved my hand. The video version of me did not. I stood up, so did it, but it moved. Half a second early. Like it was ahead, predicting. And then it tilted its head and stared directly into the camera. My camera. I wasn't in control anymore. That version of me smiled, reached toward the screen, and the video cut to static. My laptop shut down immediately after. No power, no lights, just silence. That's when I heard the knock at the door. 3 slow knocks, perfectly spaced. I didn't answer. I held my breath and waited. After a few minutes, I checked the peephole. No one was there, but on the ground in front of my door was a USB stick. No label. I picked it up with a towel and plugged it into a disposable Chromebook, completely isolated from any of my gear. There was only one file on it, a PDF, no text, just an image of a row of glass eyes in velvet-lined boxes. Underneath it, in small, bold letters, all copies now aligned. I haven't turned any machines on since. I write this by hand now. Analog. I burn the pages when I'm done. I've changed my name twice. I move every couple of months, but it still finds me. Not through devices anymore. Through people. I met a woman at a gas station once who called me by a name I've never used. A child at a library walked up to me, pointed, and said, "You're in the glitchy room." The mail I get sometimes has a return address from places I've never lived. Places I haven't yet lived. The last shred of hope I had was a message posted anonymously on a private board I still monitor with burner accounts. The post was short. Just 2 lines. There is no original. There never was. There's only what it keeps, and it keeps everything. That's the truth I've come to live with. I was never documenting this to warn anyone. That was just part of the final indexing process. It made me think I had purpose. It made me think I was resisting. But the moment I typed the first folder name into my notes, the archivist had already won. And tonight, just now, I received a notification on my e-reader. No internet, no Bluetooth. Just a message. Session 07 started. Indexing continues. Welcome, reader.